Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be. My name is Brian. I'm here with Allison. Welcome to Honey Badger Radio once again with another episode of Maintaining Frame. This is number 127. Men, Trump won't get you a girlfriend. I don't know if you guys needed to be told that, but I assume based on what we're going to be responding to, you do, in
Mm.
fact, need to be told this. So we're going to be looking at two videos, which killed me a little bit inside each one to watch.
Oh
No,
boy.
I'm serious. One by Dark Matter 2525 and one by Hannah Cox. And well, that's it. I don't know what else to say. I
Can
mean,
you
like
is there any possible way to summarize them?
no, I mean, if you want me to, but I feel like you'll have to watch it to prove that to understand how correct I am. But essentially, the Dark Matter 2525 video is oh my god, men, please don't move right because it's fascist. But also, we're not going to address any of your concerns as men. Instead, we're going to ask that you man up and just deal with it and shut up when marginalized people are speaking. Also, I'm allowed to tell you that because I am a man with a military background, and here's my entire life story that basically justifies it, and that's basically his video. Also, like he's just well, I don't know. It's basically like I just don't want men to care about themselves because they should be caring about these other things that I think are important, like women and marginalized groups or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And Hannah Cox's whole thing is, like men shouldn't think that Trump is going to fix everything for them. Then she goes on to show a video of a Bernie bro essentially that became a Trump supporter because Bernie was out of the race, saying, "Well, Trump's going to do stuff for me." And Hannah Cox is saying, "I think that's really a big turnoff." And yeah, basically proceeds to straw man basically men who voted for Trump because she straw men's men in general and says that they're all just like being needy, beta males with an external locus of control, and that's why women don't want to date them. Therefore,
That's
that.
why.
So those are like those are basically the short versions of it, and both of them are pathetic and midwittery, and it's annoying, and it shows like the level of callousness that these people have. Like they don't even want to really understand where men are
Mm.
coming from. They just want to say, "Oh no, I know what you guys are doing. I know what you're saying. I know what you believe. I
I'm
know
right.
where
I'm
you
right.
at. I'm right about this." Right, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So,
No, well,
yeah,
do you feel that there's a commonality between the two besides that?
men are to blame. I mean, Hannah Cox is okay. Basically, the only thing that's different is that Hannah Cox's thoughts on Trump being elected is sort of, um, let's say, neutral, because she has essentially labeled herself a libertarian. Therefore, she has to act like she's politically homeless and play the both sides game so that she appears to be the most intelligent person in the room, floating above everybody else. And Dark Matter is essentially against that, like firmly in the never Trump camp. And that's really where the only place where they differ. But even then, they don't really differ that much because neither of them stand for anything. They're
Mm.
either like staying out of it completely because they're moral cowards, or they're obviously just standing with their, against the side that the overwhelming number of Americans voted for, and they're going to act like they just don't understand it because, of course, they're so smart and everybody else is so dumb. And look,
Mm-hmm.
you might think that I'm like overdoing this or being hyperbolic, but these people do think that the average person is really dumb compared to them. And
Mm.
therefore, and this is why they continue to fail, because at no point do they even try to understand that people that are not dumb also made this choice and that there might be a logical reason for it. And it has nothing to do with fascism or whatever bullshit they made up in their heads. It might just be people making a rational decision and saying, this is what I'm going to do. But they can't see that because they have such an incredibly high opinion of themselves. That's the truth.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have much, but I will bet all of it on that. So
Mm-hmm.
anyway,
Well, the best place to be is right? That's
sometimes
probably
it's not.
yeah.
Blair White said a thing once, and I agree with her on this. Blair White said once, the worst place to be or the worst thing to be is right before everybody else.
Mm.
And that's what I feel like doing this show for as long as
Yeah,
we've been doing this,
we see
is that
through.
I say something is going to happen, or I say something is happening, and people think I'm crazy and they cut me off and they stop talking to me, or I get blacklisted, I get shadow banned. Like I did a stream on my channel over the weekend, and the guys I work with, they said, we think you're shadow banned. Like they were like certain of it. These guys work in tech and they're programmers. They can't like show me the receipts, but that's what they think based
On
on
what
like what
platform?
on YouTube.
Oh, of
And
course.
I
Yeah.
barely have anything, but yeah, I'm sure you are, we are, I am, Dr. Randercam is, like, obviously. And the reason is because I think that our ideas are dangerous to the
Mm.
people in power and the people who want to maintain the status quo, which are these two people. That's kind of what they have most in common. Is at the end of the day, Dark Matter 2525 wants to maintain the status quo of the internet as he knew it when he joined up during the old Atheism Plus thing. And Hannah Cox wants to maintain the status quo of women as victims and men as perpetrators that have to like level up if they want a chance with women. And if they can't level up, regardless of women's standards, it's because they're not good enough and they're not trying hard enough. So
Yeah, well, I mean,
that's
there's
yeah.
lots of stuff to unpack with that. Before we get into it, I just want to remind everyone, if you want to send us a message, you can do so at feedthebadger.com/justthetip. That's the very best way to send us a message, and also to tip us, because we get the full benefit of whatever funds you send. Sorry, my thing is tilted weirdly. And yeah, so
Call that a
feedthebadger.com/justthetip.
Dutch angle, Allison.
Yes.
It's like
Very,
some Stanley Kubrick shit that you're
very
doing over there.
clever. Yeah, because I'm Dutch too.
Oh, I didn't. Yeah, that makes
Oh,
sense.
I thought you were. I thought you were.
No, it's a filming thing where you
No, I know what a
tilt the
Dutch
cam.
angle
Oh,
is.
okay,
I
okay.
thought you were saying it was like a pun because it was a Dutch angle, and I also thought,
Unintentional,
okay,
yeah,
all
unintended
right,
pun.
fair enough.
So
All right, so feedthebadger.com/justthetip to send us a message and a tip, because you get to avoid comments, YouTube's comment enhancement system, and also you have a place to send us a comment, because I have no idea how you do that on Exeter X, the platform formerly known as Twitter.
shitter.
But yeah, so feedthebadger.com/justthetip. And we do have our monthly fundraiser live. So if you'd like to help out to make sure that we can continue to bring this snapshot from the future, you can do so at feedthebadger.com/support. And as always, if you want to see more of our content, feedthebadger.com/subscribe. It's all at feedthebadger.com. I had a lot of thoughts about these two. I'm guessing that Dark Matter is communist.
Well, I don't think he would say that. I think that he's
Socialist or
just
some
well,
stripe.
no. I think he's an atheist first.
Oh, okay.
And that mean that I think, but the thing is, his atheism informs his political views.
Mm-hmm.
So his video, if we're gonna do Dark Matter first, we could do the other one first, whatever you guys want. Dark Matter's video is like 50 minutes long,
And we
and
can't
Hannah
possibly
Cox's
do all of
video
it,
is
right?
40 minutes long. No fucking way. But the thing is, he doesn't actually get like he spends most of the first half of the video basically talking about himself and how he like basically his background as a trainee in the military, and he uses this to sort of like, let's say, give him credentials to speak on the topic of men in general.
Mm.
So I'll just like summarize his whole opening bit. Basically, he goes into this thing about he wanted to join the military, he wanted to be Rambo, and like he did all of this stuff and worked really hard. And then of course he reinforces his atheism by saying that there's this saying that no one is an
Rambo.
atheist. Yeah, Rambo, that's what
He
he
wanted to be a broken veteran dealing with
he even
PTSD,
he
homeless.
even yes, he even pointed out the irony of that, because he thought that when he was young he didn't see that side of the movie, even though that's literally what the original
Yeah.
Rambo was about. But
And
yeah,
ostracized by society. Okay, all right, fair enough.
yeah, well,
Well, at least he
yeah.
points out the irony. So there, he has that.
He does acknowledge the irony of it. There's things about Rambo though I don't think he noticed, but I digress on that. But so he goes into this whole thing about like his experience in the military, and how, essentially the whole world is evil, greedy people, and corporations working to destroy men and men's lives. It's against them, whatever. And all this is acknowledged, although I think it's a little bit simplistic because he doesn't really hold the state accountable. He makes it about corporations, which really gets under my skin when people do that, because I know they're smarter than that. But then he even though he acknowledges this reality, he still says that essentially men have to not allow themselves to be used by other forces on the internet. And of course, he doesn't come out and just say he's talking about like the Manosphere or the red pill, but he is talking about the red pill and the Manosphere because he despises the fact that those guys attract men. And one of the reasons why is because, again, this is like Hannah Cox is the same problem. They see the Manosphere as this right-wing entity, which it isn't explicitly, but that's cause enough for dark matter to rail against it, because even though he would tell you that he's an atheist, he actually worships atheism and what comes with that, which is essentially materialism. And if you don't agree with me, then you feel free to call in the show and we can talk about it. But I promise you that is what's going on. And he even goes after, he goes after people that we could also criticize, and that's fine, like J.K. Rowling, for example. But his reasons for it are not the same. So we are not the same. Like I criticize J.K. Rowling for being a feminist. He criticized J.K. Rowling for being transphobe or TERF. We are not the same. Okay.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
that's
we would criticize. I mean, I would criticize J.K. Rowling for, yes, being a misandrist, really, not even just a feminist.
Right.
And also her attitude towards trans women is informed by her misandry. Like, that's where it comes from.
But they're not they're not separate concepts. But again, I would say that I don't watch a lot of Dark Matter's content. So if I'm off on this, the chat will probably tell me. Yeah, but my guess is that he's an atheist progressive that doesn't. Chat. Yeah, he's not outright saying, workers of the world unite or anything like that. But he's probably like swimming in similar waters. So that's what I would say. But I don't want to refute that part if he didn't say that. I'll just look at the stuff that he's actually said, and I think it's damning enough. So
somebody in the chat said that Allison and I'm the shortest Dutch woman in history, and I actually think you're absolutely correct, and I might also be the strongest because I went to Holland.
You went to Holland?
Sorry, not Holland, the Netherlands. I went to
Amsterdam.
Yeah, and they had this test of strength, which was these series of pulley levers. Like they'd have one pulley and it was 50 kilos, right? And then they'd have two pulleys, and it was a demonstration of how as you add more pulleys, the easier it is to lift the weight. And I mean, I could lift the 50K with one pulley. I mean, not like Jonathan. My husband could just be like, whoop, but I could actually. And I was watching this other Dutch family, which was an older couple with their son, and their son struggled. It was struggling, and then they watched us do it, and they were just awed. I'm like, yes, that's squat Canadian strength right there.
Low center of gravity.
Low center of gravity.
That's why when I made you in the D&D game, I made you a gnome. I thought it was the most appropriate.
Yeah. So. I'm short, but I'm sturdy. Yeah.
That's right.
Go. That's
right. +2 to
right.
Constitution. All right, but so
let's get into dark matter.
Oh, you want to start with dark matter? Okay, I'm gonna jump way ahead because again, he opens up with his whole background, and he uses it to justify his opinions on men, which that's annoying. But okay, so we got here. Let me see. The reality of war and its consequences, maybe? No, it's actually a little bit further in. I'll start from here.
That he was responsible for what he alone said. It was not an official doctrine of the army. It was a personal conversation. Of course, it didn't help that he...
No, not there.
Is this dark matter? All right. Certainly an interesting approach. Certainly an interesting combination of attitudes and presentation, shall we say.
Well, this is the thing. His whole thing is the reason why he appears on camera for this video, not that he hasn't done this before, but I think that the point he's trying to make is look at me. I am heterosexual, white male. I'm a, I lift weights. I have a wife. I have children. I work hard. I'm former military. I'm all the things that you think of when you think of a conservative, but I'm not a conservative because I'm not racist or evil or misogynist. And obviously, those qualities, racist, evil, misogynist, and all that, those are conservative values, and I don't have those. Therefore, I'm a complete contradiction. Woo! Can your mind handle it? And I think that's what he's doing. He's just presenting that, and he even says this explicitly. I'm not strawmanning him. This is what he says. So this is why we're being presented with this. Can you believe it? Can you believe that a straight white male bodybuilder, ex-military guy with a wife and children could also be a white knight? Is it possible?
Oh no,
Manning
Brian, it's
exposed where
astounding. I'm
Yeah.
like, my mind is blown.
Mm-hmm.
A
not
conservative,
surprising
also
to
a
me.
white knight.
In
I
the
mean,
end,
Yeah.
I didn't give a shit about having a military career after spending some time in the military and coming to the realization that Rambo should have taught me before I ever even enlisted. That I was just a tool, a pawn, a fully expendable chess piece of some comfortable politician sitting behind a big desk, and my death would just be a fraction of a number on a piece of paper buried somewhere on said desk.
So, I mean, again, he says things that are true, but it's interesting because he literally ignores the fact that men are treated this way. And all he does is he says, yes, this is the reality, but don't become far right or whatever it is that he's worried about. Don't
okay,
become the manosphere.
he
So
understands this, and yet he doesn't understand why men might vote for the
the guy
candidate
who doesn't want to go to war.
yeah,
Yeah,
like
right.
the candidate who didn't put the US into more wars,
Yeah,
you don't understand why that might be attractive. Like, I mean,
yeah.
just setting aside everything else and looking at this purely through the lens of gender, which sex is going to be conscripted should the US get into another war? Well, maybe that sex has an invested interest in choosing a candidate who doesn't seem like a gormless warmonger.
No, but again, these are things that you like. I don't know. We'll just keep going.
Buzzed head, indistinguishable among a field of buzzed heads, only to become a headstone, indistinguishable among a field of headstones. And I knew that my life would be on the line, not for the defense of my country, like
Ugh, I'm
the
sorry. I'm trying
military
to get to the. I think it was like 20 something.
struggles to recruit people, and I can see why. We need a military, but currently I do not recommend joining the military. How do we solve such a conundrum? Well, by actually respecting the troops, not with platitudes, but by not putting them in harm's way for selfish reasons, and then claiming to honor them.
Well, yeah, that's exactly what. That's what Trump is going to do. He doesn't want people to die. He doesn't pick sides. Do you remember when he was asked? The media tried to get him to pick a side between the Russia-Ukraine conflict, and he said, "I just want people to stop dying." That is an acknowledgement that Russia and Ukraine should both exist, and there is no like we got to destroy Russia or we got to destroy Ukraine, right? Because the human lives that are being paid are really what is the what's on the line. But of
Mhm.
course, I don't know, for whatever reason, dark matter can't he's incapable of seeing that because of TDS. I can only imagine that. So,
I honestly don't understand that. Like,
yeah.
I mean, again, if anybody on this earth had reason, and I think that I have reason, and yet I can see past that, and these people can't. Right?
Yeah, yeah.
And I mean,
Misusing
I'm sorry, go ahead.
anyway, no, I would just be yapping about my experience, but and
Oh,
the only reason why I bring it up is that, having been banned from the US for 5 years is a direct result of one of Donald Trump's memos sent to the border. I bring that up as, yeah, I'd like that to change, but also I have reason. You guys don't. You have no
mhm.
reason to have this level of derangement about the guy. I mean, if I can look past that and see these things logically, Anybody on the left can do it. This is what I'm getting. This is why I bring it up. You see, it's like, if I can do that.
But Allison, but you don't. These people do not operate under like a desire to say, make things better for Americans. They only have this kind of empty, they don't have goals, right? Like in terms of like making things better. They just want to be right. So they're just pushing. This is why they don't, like, when you say, here are all of the reasons why I think this guy could be criticized. Lots of people have done this, and I have respected that. Dave Smith has talked about it, etc. But people like this don't ever do that, because that's not really what they want. Like, they don't want Trump to address, concerns. Like I can have conversations with people about that. One thing that I've seen is some, MRAs, I won't name any names, have reached out to me, and they're like, "Oh, we got to get Trump to open up like a ministry or a department for men." And I'm like, "No, we don't want that." And they were like, "Well, what do you mean?" I was like, "No, because we don't want the government in charge of anything regarding like the stuff that is sort of like, that should not be within its purview. Okay, all we want is for them to get out of the way. So if they were to do things like restore, actual due process for men and boys who are accused, if they were actually going to pursue, real like consequences for female perpetrators of sexual violence by changing the laws to like make them, genderless, so that is the way that it is carried out. If they were to recuse the Dear Colleague letter and revisit Title IX to be fair, if they were to do something about no fault divorce, like any of these things is literally not the government putting itself in shit. It's the government removing itself out of shit, right? And that's what we want, on top of like all of the other things that will have like a secondary effect of benefiting men, like closing the border, like, doing something about the economic situation, bringing back jobs, whatever, that will benefit men, which will also by extension benefit women, which is another thing that Hannah Cox doesn't know. I know we haven't gotten to that yet, but she seems to just think, why aren't men stepping up? And it's like, well, there's all these obstacles that the government has in place from previous administrations, because they wanted to create, or at least parts of it, large parts, wanted to create a population of women dependent on the state, and hopefully men by extension dependent on the state, but that hasn't quite worked out, although it has worked out for the former. So the thing is that you can get all of that, but the problem is that this guy thinks that Trump and his cabinet are bad, and one of the main reasons, and this is the truth, is because a lot of those guys are Christians, and he doesn't like Christians. He doesn't have a problem with Jews. He doesn't have a problem with Muslims, but he really doesn't like Christians, and therefore that will inform everything else after that. That's it. Like, it's really simple, because, and this, I'm saying this because I don't think he's stupid. I think he's smart enough to know that policies that will free, like men from, essentially like charge them less for taxes, allow them to pursue their own destinies, allow them to like, operate in the world without fear of persecution by women with a chip on their shoulder or whatever it is. He must know that that would be better for the country as a whole, but he cannot accept that it comes from someone who he dislikes because of their, whatever his personal beef is with religion, which is what it is. He's an atheist first. That's what I got from it. So
we got an interesting conundrum in chat today, because apparently they think we have Trump derangement syndrome today, probably because of the sarcastic title. So it's but you know what? That's fine.
No, I'm not a worshiper, but I don't have TDS by any stretch. I think that I voted for Trump, and I thought it was a completely rational thing to do. And ultimately, it's just what is it? I talked about this with Mike, Dr. Ranavercam on the news show. And I said, this isn't the end of anything. This is basically allowing us the breathing room to start to make positive change. But ultimately, we have to roll up our sleeves as Americans and get the work done. So that like, it's not about like, and that's the problem too, is that Dark Matter and Hannah Cox, they think that like men voted and they got him in, and that like now, everything is done. And that's what we think. And it's like, no, we don't. Anybody with half a brain knows that that's just the beginning. Now it's like, okay, now we can now I can like go ahead and get my life going without having to worry about all of this bureaucratic garbage, essentially like limiting my ability. And that's what men want. They just want to be left to essentially pursue, their potential, realize it. So
Hmm. Well, I think people are confused by what we are. We deal with men's issues. So in other words, we talk about the reasons why Trump would have gotten elected, the reasons why men would have supported Trump over Kamala Harris, the reasons why the situation is as it is in society on a more fundamental level than top down party politics, shall we say. So that's where we come from. And
yeah.
I guess some people might consider that insane, but
Well, and that's another thing too. Like somebody in the Rumble chat, shout out to the Rumble gang,
yeah.
mentioned Terrence Popp, who is also a veteran, not like a guy who was training, because this guy never went to war. He actually almost went to war, and then for whatever reason he got out of it. I think the conflict ended before he ended up going over there. But Terrence Popp saw things. Like he doesn't sleep, but he is on the side of men. Like
Mhm.
without question, okay? He is on the side of men. He knows what the broken laws are. He knows what the real legal challenges are. Now, I'm not talking about dating. We're talking about the actual like shit that's on paper, right? I mean, obviously, like the social dynamics between men and women are important, and we talk about them a lot on the channel. But if you want to know who a real one is, it's Terrence Popp. It's not
Mm.
Dark Matter 2525. Sorry.
Okay. Well, with that
Grow
shout
your
out,
beard as big as you want. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. So,
does he get to a point, or is this just more fluffing?
yeah. So I'm trying to find it, but let's just go
Their
into it.
service does not honor them. It violates them and abuses their oath. Now, when people see that you actually value the troops and you don't misuse them, then they'll start signing up again because it will be for a noble cause, the safeguarding of their country. I trained for the Bosnian
Okay,
conflict
I'm jumping up
because
here. I think it's
others
up
will
here.
have to work twice as
There's
hard
really
to
only
reach
one
you.
major
And
point
that's
that he makes.
because
So,
you won't have an empty glass. You'll have a glass that other people filled with dirty water, which others must empty before it can be filled with fresh, clean water. As Mark Twain said, it's easier to fool people than to convince them that they've been fooled.
now again, he's talking about these men who are disenfranchised and frustrated, and they're upset because they've been demonized for decades as men, and that one of the ways, and I don't think it's nearly the only way, but one of the, let's say, the ways that men have made their voices heard that made people like Dark Matter 2525 notice was the election. And I think this is completely a reaction to that. And now, not this, because this is the thing that matters, okay? The election is just what these people needed to know so they can now see that to them, the manosphere is the problem. Do you remember the article I sent you, Allison, that said the
Mhm.
manosphere won? Do you remember
Mhm.
that? Yeah, that's what they believe. And this is what both of these videos are essentially talking about.
That the
So
Manosphere won. Yeah.
that the manosphere won, and that that
You
now
can't.
something has to be done because the manosphere is bad. I didn't look into it. I'm speaking, for him, but he didn't look into it, or maybe he did a little bit. He doesn't like what he sees, so they must be bad. What do we do? And of course,
Mhm.
just like the Democratic Party, they who did not know how to reach out to men, they did not know what men's concerns were, and they weren't really like they didn't really care, which is why ultimately their marketing for the 2024 election was, a real man votes for Kamala Harris. Like that was the
Mm.
extent of like they didn't know what to say. These people are just as lost. They're just like, well, please don't become evil Nazis because I know you're going to be Nazis. Why don't you just
Mm.
suck it up and like get a life and grow up and stop being Nazis online? And maybe you'll find like, look at me. I lift weights. I've been in the military. I have a wife and kids. I know what I'm talking about. I'm clearly doing the man thing correctly, and you guys are not. that's
Well,
that's that's what
it
it
seems
is.
like a confluence of several factors. Um, for starters, there's a lot of men who've given up on dating. And I think that when men do that, they're far more inclined to vote according to their own personal interests and their own personal development, because there really isn't a woman at the end of the light for a lot of them. And a lot of guys, like, they're, what is it, 70% of men now are decidedly single? I don't know. I mean, the statistics are all over the place, but I do know that in 2 years, there were 10% less men willing to go out and interact with women for any reason, not just dating. And so, I mean, and those numbers are getting higher and higher year after year after year. And what happens is that as a result, women lose that influence over men as a group. You see what I'm saying? I mean, you would
Yeah.
want to appeal to women, you'd want to appeal to their sensibilities, because perhaps at the end of the day, through doing that, you will be able to have a wife and family and children and that kind of things. But now I think you have more and more men who are realizing that they're in it to advocate for their own interests, right? And they don't have to concern themselves with women's opinions. And really, that's what the whole situation with, like, the sex strike, women are going into the sex strike. They're just exacerbating that. They're actually destroying their own influence over men. And
Yep.
and I think that's what we're seeing. And it's an interesting thing to see, because, and I had this discussion with a conservative who said, well, if you lose 80% of your men, your society can still exist, because you'll have your women. Well, not for very long, because people will invade, but regardless. And I told him, I said, well, yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe the way that human reproduction is that you could lose 80% of men and still be able to reproduce yourself. But if a party loses 80% of men's support, it's gone. Right. So that completely negates that whole situation, the expendability of men. Suddenly, in some ways, this whole situation with the vote has given men more influence over time. As more and more men recuse themselves from the company of women, they gain a greater sort of identity around their own interests. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And then that becomes itself a political force. And I think that's
Right.
what we're seeing. And the left, I can't believe, like, they're didn't they basically tell men they didn't need them?
Yes, they did. That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Like,
And
he's 13
he's
now.
still, look, he's still kind of doing that. He's just concern trolling men right now by saying, like, you're angry. I get it. You're mad and you're frustrated and you've been demonized, but, like, come on, man. Come on, man. Just suck it up and go be a man again. Look at me. I'm a man. I'm doing the man thing really well. And it's like, guys are just like, no. Like, but, like, this guy's not offering anything. That's what I'm saying. Like, dark matter is not for anything. He's just against. He's against men. He's against, people with religious views. He's against Trump. He's against right wingers. He doesn't even know what it means. Like, he's already defined that in his head as all the bad things. Those are the people that believe the bad things. They must be my enemy. And it's just ridiculous. And this is like midwit trash, in my opinion. But anyway, let's see if we get to another bit. It's easier to fool people than to convince them that they've been fooled. Tell me about it. Like, I don't know. Like, but again, that's the pot calling the kettle black, as far as I can tell.
Perhaps that's because the latter requires the humility to admit when you're wrong. And
Wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah. What a
Oh,
nice trait.
a very untimely thing to say.
humility is the opposite of what young men are encouraged to have. So they will be the hardest to convince that they've been fooled. Bear that.
What?
So yes. So men are encouraged to be arrogant, ignorant, I guess, which I seriously don't see. I mean, maybe again.
Where?
Well, I think that he would say because this is the thing. He's being a bit of a coward in terms of naming, like, the issue, but I'm fairly certain he's talking about the red pill, the manosphere, whatever, where those guys are trying to help men develop confidence. And he is just patently against it because he thinks that they're misogynistic, which obviously they are not. I'm sorry, but even the worst of them is not probably as bad as you have been told. And Yeah, so he has to oppose it. So he's making shit up because like men are not, they're not lifted up by society. I wouldn't
Where
even
was
see the red pill lifts them up. They just kind of like tell them, look, dude,
Okay.
you guys are human beings.
Yeah,
know?
okay, but let's just fact check here. Okay, dude, you've made an astounding assertion. So men are encouraged to not be humble and to be arrogant. From where? I mean, aside, let's like if we maybe the red pill, but that's not something that they get exposed to unless they seek it out. Do schools tell boys? Do universities tell boys to be arrogant? Or do they tell them that they are responsible for human ills like domestic violence and sexual assault? Like, does the church tell men to be arrogant, or does it tell them to pursue the ideal of manhood, which is Jesus Christ? Was Jesus Christ arrogant or humble? Like, where are men getting the message not to be humble? Because from where I'm looking, they get it everywhere. And the idea that they have the right to actually advocate for their own interests is something that doesn't seem to be everywhere. Like, so does he ever fact check himself and actually say, hey, wait a second, I'm just blabbing something out. Can I actually
Back that
back
up.
that up?
No, he doesn't. No, he doesn't present anything.
Okay,
No.
let's.
All right, I'll just keep going.
Yeah.
That in mind, you will be encouraged to listen to people who will sell you generational wars and gender wars and culture wars, constantly trying to recruit you for their wars. These people saturate social media. Do not buy it. Women are not your enemy. Black people are not your enemy. LGBT people are not your enemy.
Hey, Bud, men are not your enemy. Bud, how about that? Sorry, I'm just getting really pissed off now.
No,
Men are not your
get
enemy.
it. I mean, what's the implication when he says women are not your enemy? What black people are not your enemy? What's the implication?
What's
That's
the
what
implication?
the implication is, that the people he's speaking to hate blacks and women and LGBTQ people. That's the implication.
You know what? I want to say this. I entered a playing field however many decades ago in which men were firmly framed as the enemy, and they are still considered the enemy to this day by all kinds of interests with plenty of institutional power and platforms to broadcast their message that men are the enemy. Why don't we just get rid of that? Let's just put a hold on it. Maybe for a day, a year, a decade. Just forget it. Men are not the enemy. Why, if men are the enemy, generally the enemy isn't responsible for keeping your lights on. You know, it isn't responsible for your ability to flush your toilet, doesn't build your houses, doesn't maintain your infrastructure and bring you your food. That's not usually the action of the enemy. So where can we fucking stow this narrative that men are the enemy? And you're absolutely right, Brian. When he says, don't treat women as the enemy, don't treat black, he's saying men are the enemy. That's what he's saying. In reverse, in negative. It's really infuriating.
Yeah, it's done in a really passive aggressive way too, right? He won't just come out and say it. He'll instead imply it, like with this feminine language. But yeah, that's kind of why I was like getting really frustrated with this video too. And of course, he has nothing to offer them. So let's keep going.
Yet there will be those who paint them all in the worst possible light, usually via the most uncharitable examples. You are sold the general idea that if there's room for them,
wait. Slow down, sir, buckaroo. Painting a group of people in the most uncharitable light. You are right now generalizing a group of people and painting them in a very uncharitable light. Are you speaking to a mirror? Like, is that what is she? Jesus Christ. But
well,
like,
I do. No, I do. I will say, I think so. This is like a new thing that I've been seeing lately. I think this guy is afraid. So men have basically stopped doing as they're told, which is the thing that he's promoting here. He's like, don't let people control you. Also, do as I say, right? But men in large numbers are like, you know what? Like this nothing, this society has nothing to offer me. And in particular, these people who advocate for, various political things. And I've been saying this for years and years and years. You can go to my Twitter, you can see my pin post. The left cannot offer men anything because they have attacked them relentlessly. In fact, they depend on men being in this sort of like evil, oppressive class in order to sustain their own relevance. So there's no way, no way that they could possibly pull that back and get men back. And they have driven them so far away that now the only people left is basically the non-left, which is everybody else, to actually try to communicate. But this guy, who is a leftist, and I promise you he is desperate because now they're afraid. Now they realize that men are people and that sometimes those people decide they don't want to associate with you anymore and they move away. And that's what they have done. They have gone to other content creators or influencers online that actually understand that men matter, whatever it is. And you might not like some of those influencers, but you know what? This is the bed you have made. You have created the conditions for this to be the case. And I am here for it because I need you to see what you have done. So when you say, like, guys, where are you going? I think he's afraid. I think that his relevance is cratering. Like this whole like new atheist movement from back in the day, atheism plus, feminism already killed that, but it's not done yet. And they don't realize it because they're still blaming the wrong people for what's happening to their, belief system. And so I think that he is afraid. I think that he's scared because he's losing the men in his audience. I bet that he's bleeding subscribers, just like David Pakman, just like the Majority Report, just like all of these other, like Kyle Kalinske and the Young Turks. They are bleeding support because the men that used to watch them are walking away from it. And they're like, nope, these people don't give a fuck about me or what I need. And they haven't given me anything. And I don't want whatever it is they're offering anyway, because it's not like Bernie Sanders is going to do anything for me. Like I have to do for myself. And so I'm going to go do for myself, but I don't need you to do that. And I think that this is putting them in a very, very disadvantaged position, and they feel the need to respond. And this is his desperate attempt to get men back on the plantation, essentially. And I don't think it's going to work.
Okay. These individuals, and I don't even want to call them the left because they're not. They're the party of the threat narrative, and the threat narrative needs a villain, and the villain is men. So the only thing that they have to offer men is being the enemy. You get to play the enemy, but you get to play the enemy that underwrites everybody. You get to play the enemy that makes sure everybody's protected and safe and provided for. But in the end of the day, you're the enemy. You just happen to be the one who's feeding everyone, who's making sure they have their lights, or lights are on, who's building their platforms that they tell you that you are the enemy on. That's it. That's all they have. That's all they have for men. They don't even have the traditional liberal principles. The idea that people should have the right to be able to speak their mind. They should be able the right to associate with whomever. They should have the right to be able to pursue merit in a system that's fair. Those are the traditional liberal values. They don't even have that anymore because, as I've said multiple times, the so-called left is simply a threat narrative that uses men and women to defend its own interests. That's it. That's all they are now. So men are villains, and what do they have for women? You're the victim. You're a victim. That's what you are, and that's all you are. Okay.
All right.
And they mean all men when they say men. They mean all men. People say, they mean they're on a war with straight white men. Yeah, but the problem is that gay men are the straight white men of gay people. Black men are the straight white men of black people. Like, do you notice that? It's always men at the end of the day. Always.
It has to be men at the end of the day. Yeah, that's how it sustains itself. All right, let's play some more.
Then there won't be any room for you. That is a lie. You will be told that your preferred way of life is under attack by those people. That is a lie.
Actually, no, it's not. Like men, what's happening right now with men that are trying to like get into relationships or they want to pursue higher education or a job. What's happening to them? What has the Me Too movement done for men's careers? What like the men are being harmed by these policies, by these social movements, and he's just pretending like that it's a lie. Like if a guy loses his job because a woman wanted his job and so she made an allegation, this guy would tell them, no, that didn't happen. That's a lie. That's not happening to you. You must have done something to cause this, because women never do that, right? Even if every apparatus is backing them up, nay, encouraging them to do it. Like if a man ends up getting a divorce and the divorce lawyers come in and they're like, you can take half his shit, right? Here, we have all the tactics. Here's the playbook. Get all of that money because we're going to get our cut. And the woman acts on it. That this guy will tell you, no, that's not happening. You must have done something. You must have acted badly. You must have behaved poorly in order for this to be the case. This is why it's kind of frustrating, because there's zero desire, not even like empathy, because that's kind of an empty thing. There's not even curiosity. There isn't even curiosity to be like, well, let me look at the situation for men here. Let me see if there are things that are unjust. Let me see if I can like get through like some research without landing on capitalism bad or some other straw man nonsense, and actually look at like what the actual forces are at play here, where the incentives are at. Why are men being accused of all these things? What is and is this real? I mean, when he says they're showing you a lie, you mean like just going on the whatever podcasts and just seeing how women act, just going on TikTok, just going on X and just saying, hey ladies, what do you think, man or bear? Just seeing that. Like it's not hidden. You don't have to like dig. You can just go to, what is it? The female dating strategy on Reddit. You just look at it's women's views on men, their opinion on men. It's just out there and men just see it. And this guy's saying, oh, no, that's the fresh and fit guys lying to you. No, you don't need them to show you. You can just look for yourself. So like, again, who are you serving when you tell men this? You are basically telling them to get back in the meat grinder and stop complaining.
Yeah. I mean, and funnily enough, he starts all of this by saying, well, I didn't want to be treated as expendable as a man. Can you extend that to other men? Like,
yeah.
As you advocate for a side that vilifies them and justifies treating them as expendable. I mean, what do you think? How do you think certain animals end up in the abattoir? I think that's how you say it. It's because we treat them as expendable, right? That's the beginning. And how do we justify bombing another country? We treat them as the villain, right? That is where our sense of expendability comes from. So how can you say, oh, I didn't want to be treated as expendable as a man, but then not question how that expendability is manufactured, in terms of people's narratives around men? Okay. Let's
I was a little bit, this is kind of like this is the ultimate, like what I was going to say, this section I'm playing, this is basically the main chunk of actual things that I could respond to. So
it's just another way to keep us divided. Human beings are strongest when we're united. And those who have power keep their power by keeping their enemies weak. And they keep their enemies weak by dividing them.
So you're saying that the whatever podcast and Fresh and Fit and Andrew Tate have all the power and not the gigantic feminist apparatus? Is that what you're saying? Because I agree with you. The left, not liberals, the left divides people because that's how they get their power. Not liberals. That's different. They co-opted that. I'm just making it clear, okay, before liberals I'm liberal. I don't agree with that. Yes, you're not the left. You're liberals. Those are different things.
Yes.
The left.
Have you not noticed?
No, they're not liberals. Like, I don't know how many times I have to say it. Okay, that's not the same.
I want to say, okay, if you don't realize they're not the same, notice how many former leftists are now in Trump's.
The right.
Right.
Right, like, exactly. Or the non-left, as I coin it, which is basically everybody else.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, well, again, I'm just going back to this. Feminists, they don't care about women. I'm just going to focus on feminists, but you can apply this broadly to leftists and commies all over. But feminists, by and large, They don't care about women. No, they just don't. That's not really in their, like charter. It's not their goal, because if it was, they wouldn't constantly be coming up with new ways to say that women are oppressed and therefore you need to give them money. So they are only concerned with maintaining their relevance. It's about keeping their jobs.
Okay,
Right?
I just have a question for the chat, because they're like, liberals aren't leftists. Okay, what exactly do you leftists believe? What could you enunciate what it is you believe?
Leftism,
Yeah, what is it?
they believe in
No, let them
equity.
say it. Let them say it. Like
Oh,
the
okay,
thing,
okay.
like let's see what they have to say. Like, what are your principles? All
Yeah.
right, and just tell it in the chat. Let's just hear it. Let's hear it.
All right.
Let's
Well,
have that discussion.
the
But
chat is very special, but I
yes,
appreciate them being there. All 360 of you guys. So thank you.
it actually peaked above 400
Yeah,
for
it
a
was
while
like
there. Congratulations.
almost. I think it was like 600. But yeah, pretty good.
Whoa. Yeah, pretty good.
Yeah, I think so. But mostly they were just doom scrolling. They were just like, okay, what's this about?
Yeah,
But
I
anyway,
think we get a lot of confusion watchers. They're like,
I just, yeah, it's fine. I'm just saying it's
they're trying to
important
figure
that
out
people
what our position
understand
is.
that.
They're trying to figure it out, because I think that we sound like some weird amalgam of conservative and liberal at some points. And maybe I'm bringing more of the liberalism than you are, Brian, but it's like,
I mean, how am I not liberal? That's what I'm saying. Like, how am I
yeah,
not liberal?
eh,
Okay, look, that's a different conversation. But
yeah,
all I'm saying is ultimately, leftist is not liberal and right wing is not conservative. These are not equal. And I've made a video about this and I've talked about this a million times. They are not the same. Stop using them interchangeably. They're not the same. But this guy is claiming that the manosphere is divisive and is apparently a powerful force, even though it's all just dudes on the internet and not the government and not the academic field and not in the media, and they're not involved in like in the like the, let's say, the major entertainment sphere. None of those areas are manosphere spots like that. They're literally, he's blaming the small voices and saying that they should just fall in line with the extremely powerful ones. So, and claiming that they're the ones being divisive. It's essentially saying, why aren't you doing as this strange woman is telling you to do? Why aren't you doing as you are told? So
okay. Let's continue. Let's finish dark
right.
matter so we can get to the actual topic, which is Trump
pitting them against each other.
Yeah.
That's what's happening to us now. You can be traditional if you want, but that doesn't require demanding it of everyone else. Look at me. I'm nearly everything they tell you to unapologetically be. I'm a veteran. I carry a gun. I'm a straight white man, a landowner, a homeowner, a husband, a father, a weightlifter. On paper, I'm the perfect soldier for the traditional cause, but most of my friends are
Maybe it's not
progressives.
traditional.
Yeah, he's calling it. Well, what? Wait, Allison, did you just say that just because something has the traits of something, it doesn't make it the label that people use on it? Because that's crazy. That'd be like me saying, you know what? I like small government, and also I don't think that gays should be rounded up and put into camps. And they'll be like, whoa, that's awfully progressive, and yet not. It's like, no, it's just what I think. It's probably not that wild.
Yeah.
So,
well, I mean, the thing is, okay, well, I wish he would get to a point that we can discuss.
well, he's trying to say, look, this is what his point is. He is saying that he basically makes this mistake of presuming that a man who tries to do all of the things that are considered, what does he call it, the traditional man, he thinks that means that that comes with a bunch of other negative traits that he just associates with men who are traditional because he hates tradition, I guess. Like, at least that kind. I mean, he's basically living in a bit of a contradiction, or at least that's what he thinks, because he's like, well, I do all the man things, but I'm also a progressive. It's like, well, yeah, but those things aren't mutually exclusive.
Yeah.
Like, just like most people, those things are not mutually exclusive. He's like, no, they have to be. They have to be, because otherwise, how would I stand out? How could I be the one good man above all other one good men?
Yeah,
that's what I'm doing right now, right?
Yeah. And
So
honestly, I just have one dividing line. Do you think men are the enemy, or do you
right.
not think men are the enemy?
Yeah.
And
Well,
sir,
his
you
concern is not that. His concern is not that. His concern is, are women the enemy? That's his concern. And if he thinks men are treating women as the enemy, then they're not human until they change that. So
well, I mean, not even not treating men and women as the enemy, just not treating them as neutral. Like just that, like
of
women are there.
fallible human beings, right?
Yeah, just
Just like men.
neutral. Like just
Yes.
okay, women exist. They vote for their interests. We're going to vote for our interests. The end. That's not even treating women as the enemy. It's just not caring. It's being indifferent. I don't think
Hmm.
I think he would consider that treating women as the enemy too. I mean, it's the
Yeah.
great indifference. Really?
Yep. Yep.
All right, let's keep going.
I'd venture to say that a lot of my hundreds of thousands of subscribers are progressives, and yet they accept me for who I am. They don't care that my life is traditional because I don't waste my life attacking them. Do you? Are you being encouraged to do so? By whom and why? Have you ever asked yourself these things? I've made mistakes in the past, yeah. I've said insensitive things in the past, and sure, some people have had problems with that, and in response, it would have been very cheap and easy to turn my back on my values out of spite and become a successful grifter for those who want to sell you culture wars. But that's not who I am. I wouldn't.
All right. So
You're not selling a half
uh,
of the culture war, like you just you are saying you are putting the onus on the manosphere for the existence of men's. I don't even think it's fear. It's just discomfort with the world as it stands. You're putting that on the manosphere. You're saying you've got the causal arrow reversed because the manosphere, like if the manosphere disappeared tomorrow, men would still be angry. Men would still be experiencing disenfranchisement through DEI, through diversity, equality, and inclusion hires that literally discriminate against men. All right. Men would still be experiencing these things if you silenced every manosphere person talking about them. So that the manosphere isn't constructing the problem. The issue is that you are constructing the problem and you can't be trusted to talk about men. And I'm going to tell you why. Because he is a one good man. He
yeah.
has invested his identity in being better than other men, different than other men, in silencing other men and saying that other men's opinions are not valid. He uses his podium to invalidate the opinions of other men. How can he be then said to talk for anybody but himself? And here's the big thing. There is a seduction in this narrative about being the one good man and making every other man the enemy, because then you are the best.
Hmm.
You are the worthy man, the only worthy man, the man who really is legitimately, every woman deserves every woman because you advocate for their interests. You're the only one, right? Every other man has fallen but you. And there is a huge egotistical seduction to that narrative. And I think he's in there. He's in that space, Brian.
Oh yeah, I know. Well, that's what I'm saying. Like this is kind of ultimately where this goes is he's basically saying, I have all of the surface level qualities of a chauvinist, misogynist man, and yet I am not. I am better. I am progressive, and all of my friends are progressive, and my audience is progressive, and yet they don't judge me because I have all these trad surface level qualities. Why are you doing that? And it's like, what are you accusing these people of? What are you trying to say? Like, and also, like, you can say all this now, but if one day your wife just like divorces you, or maybe somebody that you're close to does, and he loses everything and then he takes his own life, what are you going to do? Are you going to complain that like, about the Manosphere some more? Or are you going to like look into what actually is, who actually holds the cards in this situation? Now, where are the problems coming from? I think that this is what I'm saying when I say this guy is afraid. Number one, he's afraid of losing, that his ideology, his progressive ideology, is losing it's losing ground at a massive rate, and it's coming from men. I mean, women are still mostly on board, and we already talked about this in a show when we looked at the drift, the political drift of women moving crazy left and men moving slightly right, not even really, just slightly. Mostly they're staying the same. Mostly men still don't hate women. Mostly men would love to just be able to just find a nice girl, start a family, get married, not in that order, get married, start a family, and then just carry on from there. But they're not the ones being put in under a threat narrative that basically says that the opposite sex wants you, raped and dead and pregnant and in the kitchen all at the same time. That's not a narrative men are getting. That's a narrative women are getting, and they're not getting it from men. Okay, they're getting it from their teachers. They're getting it from their parents. In many, they're single moms. They're getting it from social media. They're getting it from influencers. They're getting it from their entertainment. They're getting it from their music. They're getting it from everywhere, and many of them buy into it, and they also feed into it as well. They have been propagandized to be terrified of men and of society as a whole, and that's why they're the ones having panic attacks on TikTok about the election. They're the ones crying their eyes out. They're the ones threatening to like kill people. They're the ones that have actually killed people. If you guys remember the story of the woman who killed her father with an ice axe because he voted for Trump, or she suspected that he voted for Trump. We don't even know if he did, because he was infirmed and dependent on her to take care of him because he was in his 70s, and she murdered him. And when the police showed up, she was laughing, covered in his blood, and clapping and saying that she's finally free. Men aren't doing that. Women are doing that. Okay, so who is telling them that that is acceptable? And this is why this is so frustrating, when this guy is like, he's basically just engaging in containment. Oh, we're just gonna go back to the status quo, guys. Go back to your normal lives where you are basically alone. You have no prospects. You have like very little going for you because all of these things are in your way. All of these obstacles to your education, to your future potential, to making money. And even if you do have a job, and even if you do well, you're probably still not going to attract the majority of women, because they're looking for the guy with 6 figures, 6 inches, a six pack, and and he's 6 feet taller or more, because they have bought into this idea that they are at once under the thumb of men everywhere, but also deserve the absolute best men. And they're actually buying into it with girl math. So I don't think this guy has anything useful to say at all. And he's speaking from nowhere. Like it's like another planet where, there are men who I guess they can just decide that they're just going to get their life together and it just happens. And that everything is going to fall into place for them, because that's the feminist narrative about men. And I think he believes it. So those are my thoughts on that.
I'm just looking at Spencer G in the chat and seeing what he has to say. Okay. Does this guy ever make a point? This individual,
Allison, that is the point. The point is that he is the quintessential example of the good man, and he's wondering why men aren't doing that. So they should stop watching, these like I don't know, the Manosphere stuff, I guess, and just be like him. That's it. I'm sorry, but it was it's like a 50-minute video, but that's really the only takeaway. And I watched the whole fucking thing.
Well, I don't know if we necessarily need to continue to watch. So basically, men be like me and vote Kamala Harris, I guess.
Well, no, the election's over, but basically saying men be like me and please don't, oppress women.
Okay, let's
help
try.
it.
Do you have let's give him one last chance to make a point.
All right. I'll just
Is there anything in the
I mean, he just elaborates on this point. So
be able to live with myself if I did that. And in the end, progressive people still accept me for who I am. So I gotta say, when people claim that my way of life is under attack by them, by my own friends, it rings quite hollow. But then again, I have a lot of life experience and I know better. So I'm not exactly the target audience. You are. The
Good
young men of this
God.
world, a powerful
Are
force
you
for their
okay?
cause.
Okay, stow the estrogen, lady. Could you just dial back the church lady contempt a little bit? Like, it's just
Yeah, right.
awful. It's, I mean, I am getting like it. I'm getting um secondhand sort of like shaming from this. I don't know how to describe it. It's like, but the way he's talking, it's so self-righteous, and you know what I mean? It just it has a bad
Oh, it
mouth.
is. Yeah, that's the way progressives are, Allison. They know that they're better than everybody else. That's why they can talk to them however they like.
Yeah. All right. Let's
That's
keep
it's
on.
true though. Like I'm sorry, but I'm just kind of tired of playing this game. Progressives think they're better than everybody, and they think their brains are big, and so they talk big, but they don't say anything of substance. Nothing this guy says is useful to anyone. Okay, it might sound really assertive because of the way he's saying it, but if you listen to the substance of his words, they're empty, they're hollow. So the only way that like I could, you know who I could bring on as a good counterpoint, because if you guys like beardy dudes that are talk really serious, I could bring on Hammerhand. He could probably demolish this guy, to be honest, because he knows what's really going on. He knows that the problems are not simply men are frustrated and I don't know, they're angry at women. It's not that. Like if women said we love you, men would put their weapons down immediately. Not that even intend to use them, but I'm saying
What's the weapon?
figuratively.
The vote?
Well, I mean, like they're words, like they're
Yeah.
they're trolling online, whatever it is, cat turd, saying repeal the 19th. I mean, I think that like, but the thing is that women have leftist women specifically have been only emboldened to hate men even more to the point where they can make death threats or even actually kill them. And I don't think, I mean, it's just what's happening. Like you could say they're terminally online, and I might agree, but it doesn't matter. Like this is the reality. And Dark Matter has nothing to offer them. That's why he's making this video. It's a desperate move. He is desperate for men to remain progressive because he believes that being progressive is the best thing you can be because he is the one good man. That is where this comes from. There is no other substance to this. It is as large as an ocean and deep as a puddle. So, long ass video, 50 minutes, not much being said.
Yeah, I could see that. Okay. I do want to eventually respond to Spencer G, because at least he actually, honestly, I think he did more work than the guy in the video. But let's let him finish this point.
Could be directed at an
Brian is
enemy
skeptical.
who isn't really your enemy. You know what though? My tradition.
Let me ask you this though. I'm just gonna put it out there, okay? Yes, I don't think that men see women as their enemy. I don't think they do. But do women see men as their enemy?
Yeah.
Maybe that's what you should be asking.
Like you can just say men don't see women as the enemy, but maybe what's happening is they're reacting to women seeing men as the enemy. And it's not even that. Honestly, I don't, when I listen to the red pill bro stuff, like it's not as nasty as the stuff I see coming out of female dating strategy or the rad femmes, or even now the 4B response to Trump's win. Like that's some really nasty stuff, really violent and disturbing. For the most part, the red pill bros still want to have a relationship with a woman. They still maintain the idea that a woman in their life is a good thing and that they appreciate femininity, right? This is what I hear. Now, I mean, I disagree with them in terms of not holding women accountable for things and just saying, well, that's the way women are. No, I think women are the way they are now because they lost their jobs 2 centuries ago. And now we've seen they've been living on their own shit for generations. And that's what they look like. It isn't necessarily female nature. It is female nature having incredible, like being idle and not having their own thing that they used to have, and also living on their own shit, their own mental shit for several generations. So I don't think that this is what women necessarily are. Okay, so I would disagree with a lot of red pill bros on that. But I don't see the red pill, like, honestly, and I've done this on Twitter. I've tweeted out stuff I've seen radfem say, and stuff I've seen TERF say, and stuff I've seen people in female dating strategy say. And I've said, okay, show me anything comparable from the red pill. Like, show me, because I'm not seeing it. And it's like that there's just, so a lot of this stuff, a lot of what we're seeing, maybe it has nothing to do with men seeing women as the enemy. Maybe it has everything to do with women seeing men as the enemy. Okay, that's just what I want.
That's what I think. Well, I got a super chow and I got a super chat, so I should read them. So Great Endurance gives us $10 super chow and says, for all his posturing while addressing men, remember that the last video the Justicar uploaded on YouTube was addressing Dark Matter 2525, in which Justicar criticized his gender fluid stance, with Dark Matter denying that there is such a thing as male or female. What is a man? An adult human being who will be drafted for a war if necessary, no matter if he wants to or not. Well, that's the thing, right? Like, he can deny the existence of a binary while also presenting a binary that is the, men and everybody else, including progressive men, I guess. And that's the binary. So, and then I got a super chat from and I can't pronounce that, but it looks like some German shit. So I'm just going to say the buttock. And he says, this channel used to be Honey Badger Radio with Hannah and then that went on Kumite with Tonkasaw and Medicare, or is this a different Honey Badger? This is the same, but this is an alternate channel. So yes, this is us. Thank you. And thank you for the $5. Appreciate it. Okay. We never stopped. We've always been here.
Yep.
All right. So that's it for this.
The news of our demise 7 years ago was
greatly exaggerated.
Greatly exaggerated. Okay.
So, anyway, so now we got Hannah Cox, and she made a video called "Do These Men Think Trump Can Get Them a Girlfriend?" which is where the title of this video comes from.
Yeah, like I wasn't saying that in earnest, although it does actually tie into something that I have been talking about. But before we do that, I wanted to look at what Spencer G had to say, because I did do the challenge of, could you explain this man's point? And Spencer G said, he was in the vertical chat. So thank you, special vertical chat. Men objectively, statistically, and quantifiably hold all the cards, zero room for debate.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, I guess we're going. Good night, guys. Have a good one. Subscribe and all that. Bye. I'm going to go get on my golden plane and fly to the moon where my secret base is at, because I'm a man. I'm going to put on my crown.
Yeah. Well, okay, then go live in the world where everybody believes that, Spencer G, that we have figured it out as the human race. 2 million years old. We finally figured everything out.
That's gotta be bait. Spencer G, in your favor, I'm going to presume that you were trying to bait us, because you couldn't possibly be that stupid. So I'm going to say that you were just being like pretending to be retarded. So just say you're pretending to be retarded, because if you're not pretending, then I guess it's real. So
if men have all the influence, then why suddenly is the left really worried about men having influence? Like, this is all that we're talking about right now. We're talking about people on the left who call themselves on the left worrying about men suddenly having influence. This is it. So if men always had influence, why are you all suddenly worrying about their influence?
It's not just influence. It's all the cards. Isn't that how you said it?
Oh yeah, okay.
All the cards doesn't mean influence. It means absolute power.
If men had all the cards, that would mean all the influence. Why are you guys suddenly worrying about men's influence right now? Huh? Okay.
Yeah.
Spencer G says, it really comes off that you two are hyper online and don't really have a finger on the pulse of data and reality. Just your observer's bias about what you see every day. Yeah, we talk to men every day. Like, we're some of the few channels that actually do that. Even channels that are for men don't usually talk to men who are going through this stuff. Right? Okay. Spencer G.
All right.
I just want to finish this. Genuine question for the streamers. Do you believe men have an elevated systemic position in society? No.
It's not even about belief. It's about facts. How many can you name a policy or law or something in one of our founding documents in whatever country you're in that explicitly benefits men and not women?
Yeah, I mean, and the other thing is, even if it does benefit men, how do you
Explicitly.
bring in things like asymmetrical expectations placed on men, like men need to go to war to fight, or the fact that in around the world, if women became men tomorrow, they would be dying 3 to 4 to 5 times more often, because the male role explicitly is one of self-sacrifice and the expectation of protecting others and sacrificing themselves in terms of providing and doing jobs that are very dangerous. So how can you look at that and just ignore that? Right? Okay. And so let's see the next question.
I got Richard Bier gave us a super chow, so I'm gonna read it really quick. For $5, and he says,
No more questions. Sorry.
he actually has the audacity. Well, I can't be here all night, Allison. He actually has the audacity to say that fully achieving your goals might be a bad thing, because once the goal is achieved, then you are left with living a life of quiet desperation because you don't have anything else to struggle towards. No, just become a progressive and they'll let you in their club, maybe. His example being Robin Williams, who had immense success and still took his own life. He, of course, doesn't mention the dementia that Robin was suffering from, where he was in fear of the things that he might do to his family when he was experiencing an episode of not recognizing the people around him. Also, Robin Williams notoriously had struggled with depression and substance abuse problems. But a lot of this comes from, something that was not addressed appropriately from his early life, which of course we are not allowed. See, here's the thing, you can't even really talk about men having problems if people are not even open to the possibility that those things matter. And I know that there are men who watch us that have problems and they don't share them. You know how feminists are always like, just share your feelings, bro. They don't actually want to hear it. They don't.
Yes, that's a way of silencing men. And
Yeah,
making
it's
them
a way of
responsible for
shutting
their
them up.
problems.
So
We don't have
anyway.
to deal with men's problems because they don't talk about them. And it's their fault they don't talk about them.
Yeah. All right. But anyway, that's all of, let me just make sure I didn't miss anything. I think that's all of the super chats and super chows. So, okay.
Oh, I do have to do a thank you. Thank you for Richard Bier for sponsoring this double feature for the tune of $1,000.
Wow. Thank you so much. Here you go.
And by the way, I sit on the stand and it get hot. I got hairy legs that turn that turn blonde in the sun. And the kids used to come up and reach in the pool and rub my leg down so it was straight, and then watch the hair come back up again. They look at it. So I learned about roaches. I learned about kids jumping on my lap. And I've loved kids jumping on my lap.
I know that was a bit long-winded, but it was worth it for the money. So thank you for that little anecdote.
Oh man. Oh,
Anyway.
okay. All right.
Let's jump. Okay, this is Hannah Cox. She is a libertarian feminist, and I'm gonna jump to this thing where she talks about the you're gonna love this, the victim complex that men have. Again, this is in line with Dark Matter's video as well, because apparently men having grievances is having a victim complex. Also, men, share your feelings more.
By opportunists who want to use their misery to advance their own power instead of being told what I'm going to say, which is man up, roll up your sleeves, and get to work. This coddling is not good for anybody. I think it feels good to people in the moment, but allowing people to stay in their delusion, allowing people to feel sorry for themselves, in the long run, you only hurt them. Anybody feeding you a message of grievance politics, whether it be the red pill groups online or right-wing politicians, does not have your best interest.
Feminists, which they've been feeding that to women for how many generations now?
Good question.
I mean, she identifies as a feminist. Do you ever look in the mirror when it comes to grievance? And again, right off the bat, I don't have to prove that feminist basic premise is wrong, that is patriarchy conjecture, because it's never been proven right. In fact, it's never in the literature, and I've read quite a bit of the literature. It has never been stated in a way that could be proven wrong or right, true or false. Like nobody ever thought, hey, this foundational myth that we're going to push out as the essential, like this is the relationship between men and women. Hey, maybe we should look at that and see if it's actually true. Maybe we should spend a little time testing that before we make it policy of the land. We start teaching it to 6-year-olds, right? Nope, never. It was just shat out and then basically crowned as the truth without any kind of expectation of being held to a standard, scientific standard of reality, shall we say. Okay, so right there, women's primary narrative of grievance has never been proven true. And there is plenty of evidence to show that it isn't, couldn't possibly be true, because people care about women more than men. How do you construct a society that cares about men more than women from the collective choices of people who care about women more than men? How does that happen? The answer is it doesn't. The answer is it's a narrative designed to trigger their already existing biases towards women in favor of protecting women. It's bullshit. And it's now a very, very loud, pervasive bullshit that's never been proven true. And it's a grievance that's almost built into the fabric of our society at this point. And of course, she isn't going to question it. That would require actually thinking outside the box. Okay.
Yep. All right.
Yep.
And you need to learn to recognize it. I would say this across the board with people. People are so sensitive and they are so apt to think somebody talking frankly to them is an enemy and doesn't like them and has it out for them, instead of recognizing that actually the people who are willing to hurt your feelings and tell you hard truth typically care about you more. And they're typically less selfish in their interest. Have some discernment on that front.
Okay. So I'm guessing that she's talking about the right actually talking about men's issues, right? For once. And then men.
Which is true. Megyn Kelly brought it up. Josh Hawley's brought it up. Warren Farrell is getting audiences with some of these people. Legit.
He must be eating some serious crow because he's a gigantic leftist.
He is. He wrote an article about it. He basically wrote an article. He framed it as the Democrats, they're not addressing men's issues, and this is why I'm going to be talking to Republicans. But ultimately what it is that the Democrats have just completely fallen into the left hole, which requires them to frame men and white people and other things, but mostly just men as the enemy, because you need an enemy in order to build a base of dependents that love the state so that they can vote for the state. And that's really ultimately what it comes down to. But like Warren Farrell is making some headway, and people are actually, again, this comes down to the laws and the policies and the ways in which these things impact men, things like the economy, the jobs, the immigration, etc. This is not even like, it doesn't matter how many individual men you talk to. Those things are real things. The Dear Colleague letter is real. You can just look at it. The Title IX offenses and the issues with that are real. The stuff happening in the military to men is real. I've had people on my show and spoke to them about.
The discrimination?
We're talking about things written into the law, not anecdotes, not even statistics, things that are just in the laws. And if you don't know that, then you haven't looked into it. So
yeah, and then there's additional stuff like policy. It isn't written into the law, but active discrimination against male victims of sexual assault and domestic violence. Now, that's stuff that I've witnessed firsthand over the last 20 years that I've advocated for this stuff. So it's there. You just have to listen and see it. Okay, and
I gotta. Oh, sorry.
Of all the people, like people in the chat were like, "Oh, you need to touch grass. You're terminally online." Me and Brian and a few other people have the most experience in the world listening to and talking to men who have issues Okay. And don't reframe them in the commonly accepted wisdom. And also talking to people, men in particular, trying to help other men. Like, I believe that me and Brian and like, we're not the only ones, maybe Voice for Men, people in the sphere, we have the most experience with this stuff. So it doesn't matter if you say, oh, you need to have real life. We do. And we're the only ones who do. We have decades of real life experience advocating for these issues, trying to help the people bringing services to men and boys and researching this stuff. Okay, I just wanted to point that out.
All right. Well, I got a Rumble rant from NovaFan21, gives us $2 and says, women's rights activists, you men built the patriarchy to oppress us, and you have zero incentive to be kind to us. Also, women's rights activists, how do we get you, men, to care about us? Thank you for that, NovaFan. Although I wouldn't call them women's rights activists. I think women's rights activists are not the same as feminists. So, but anyway, that's just like, I guess, semantics.
In response to me, another person said, I think the overall point is that we have increasingly been living in a culture that demonizes and vilifies masculinity for no good reason. The right has done an exceptional job of speaking to those concerns. I pushed back and I said, I think they've done an excellent job at coddling men, giving them a victim complex and promising big government as a solution in the exact same way the left has done for women. Everyone needs to grow up. And
a government is a solution. Okay, the solution is to stop funding this shit.
I want to know which specific promises the government has made to men. Does anybody know? No, I know they haven't, but she's claiming they have. She's claiming that the right, whatever the hell she means by that, has promised men stuff, and that it is a big government solution, apparently. Even if, and I want to know what, if they did do that, and what specifically they have offered, because I've never heard of this, unless you mean they're going to do things that involve taking the government out of stuff, which Trump did in his first term when he reversed the Dear Colleague letter and Betsy DeVos created a more level playing field for allegations and stuff in college campuses, which was good. But when Biden came back, he just put it back in, which basically put men back on the back foot. So if there is a policy or an actual promise, something substantial that has been made, which is what Hannah Cox is claiming, I'd like to see it. But I don't think there was, because I didn't hear about anything. Otherwise, it would have been a news show topic. So
yeah. And the funny thing is Hannah Cox,
and that's not coddling, by the way, which is another claim that she's making. So
yeah, actually taking care of the men who take care of society is not coddling. But also, it seemed like, and I got into this conversation with somebody who said that recognizing these harms is, I don't know, playing the victim. It's like, well, at what point, if a person punches you in the face and you punch them back, or alternatively, you just block the punch, is that playing the victim? Like, really, if you acknowledge that a person is hurting you and you take steps to prevent them from doing so, is that truly playing the victim? Right? I mean, because you can't stop a person. You can't take any kind of effective defensive action before you recognize that harm is being done. And something occurred to me when you were talking about treating men as the enemy. They treat men as the enemy, and yet it's an enemy that's expected to put their interests first and only. Isn't that interesting? It's like, and also expected to swallow any kind of aggressive or nasty. And I noticed that she didn't even address the point that men are being vilified. And they're being vilified by government paid organizations, right? And she says, oh, it's government intervention to prevent that. Well, just stop paying them. How is reducing the government a government intervention?
Well, and the other thing too is there is a conflict of interest here, because I think men do want the government to be smaller, but despite Hannah Cox avoiding the subject, women want the government to be bigger, mostly, unless those women are married and they're in a marriage with a man and they're both raising children together, in which case those women do care about the size of government, but the single ones don't. But Hannah Cox thinks that both of these things can coexist in women, and it's not a contradiction at all. So again, I just don't think it's well thought through. I mean,
Mhm.
it just isn't. So
Okay.
I don't know. All right. Let's listen to more. So this section is called "Is There a War on Men?" So we're gonna go through basically the whole thing, but it doesn't go for that much longer.
All right, I
I
gotta.
just fundamentally do not believe what he's saying to be true.
What? She
I will
doesn't think it's
be.
true that you will what?
I'll be right back. I can hear
All right.
everything. I hear
All right.
everything. I just need to
All right.
stretch my
On its
freaking
face.
legs.
Like, yes, there are some subsets of the population that don't like men. There are certainly ways the left has seemed more hostile towards men, but mostly it has been an era of admission more so than direct attacks. We typically see them speaking to everybody's issues but white men, white straight men.
No, I don't think that's true. I think you can find plenty of people on BreadTube that just openly are hostile towards men because they're hostile towards patriarchy, which is men.
Okay.
And there's no getting around that, by the way.
No, there
But
isn't.
she wants to downplay it and be like, "Oh no, it's just like they're just they're just kind of ignoring them." No, that's not really what's going on.
We
But
exist
go
in
ahead.
an institutionalized narrative that men are to blame. And again, narrative has never been proven true. Not even it has not even been proven, it hasn't even been framed in a way that could be proven true or false in the literature. And if you want to prove me wrong, go find it. Go find the feminist literature that actually tests the null hypothesis when it comes to patriarchy conjecture. Go find it. And I will show you feminist literature that became anti-feminist. Okay? That it asserted something anti-feminist. All right. So anyway,
All right.
let's keep going.
And I understand why that would be a turnoff and why that would push men further right. But I don't believe there have been massive like cultural attacks on masculinity.
What? That's because you don't care to look. Like you don't even, I mean, she talks about gender and men, and she doesn't even do the least amount of research. She could she could turn herself around and fart out her anus and it'd be more intelligent. Like this is, you don't do the work to understand men, to look at their issues, to look at the literature, to see what's actually happening, to examine the methodologies, to look at the statistics, to see where the statistics have been turned into bullshit, and to define all of it. You don't do the work. All you do is mouth off your uninformed opinion about men and women within a context that's already been predetermined for you. A belief system that you don't question on any level. Right? Like, of course you don't see it. You don't look for it. Okay.
Yeah.
True masculinity. What there have been attacks on is toxic masculinity, behavior patterns that are stereotypically found among too many men to this day that hurt women, that hurt men, that hurt children,
You
that hurt
offer
society.
nothing.
I do think
You offer nothing, Hannah Cox. Nothing. Except just more of the same.
So for any feminists that are watching, can you please give me a quality of masculinity that is unique to masculinity, that is positive, that is a force for good? All right. So, because that's what I want to know. Because they always bring this up. They never really address it. They just say, oh, no, I'm not talking about masculinity. I'm talking about toxic masculinity. But what is that? And I know what they'll say it is, but then like, what is the counter to that is unique? This is the most important part. Unique to men. Something that is not something that women could just do too.
Yeah, a positive quality unique to men.
A positive quality unique to men.
You talk about the toxic qualities,
culture,
but
Yeah.
never the positive qualities. And in fact, to this day, whenever I've asked a feminist, they can't identify anything positive about masculinity. So when they say toxic masculinity, that doesn't, they mean that masculinity is toxic.
Yep. Okay. Continuing.
there has been a tendency to paint men as stupid or lazy, and that has been harmful. But I covered this when I talked about Bluey a few weeks ago. I even think that has changed and is going to continue to change because the market is demanding it, and that has been rightfully called out. But I do not.
All right. I also want to say one other thing. I forgot to bring it up before when she said that this rhetoric is moving men to the right. Just to clarify, men are not actually changing their politics very much at all. Women have moved far left. And I think that men staying still makes it look like they're moving right, but they're not. They're mostly just staying the same.
And
There's a
let's
very slight move to the right, but
and let's
I'm
talk about
guarantee
South
you, if you
Korea.
ask the average man, yeah, let's you can bring up South Korea if you want. Go ahead.
No, I think they're really moving to the right in South Korea.
Yeah,
So,
the men there are more well, they're just sick and tired of feminism. That's it. I don't even
Mhm.
really think that it's like, what does that even mean? Like, do people even know, what that even means to like move right? So, but I'm sure no one's gonna answer that.
Not
Well,
see these broad attacks on men or masculinity that people in this victim complex continue to try to say are all around them. And when you push back on some of this, as I often have, when you push back on this whole argument that like men have been held back, the system is hurting men have been set up to fail,
But
you really
literally
can't
that
get many hard.
literally that's the case. Diversity, equity, and inclusion actively discriminates against men. I mean, literally that's what people have done. They have made it legal, like law and policy, to discriminate against men. Like, how do you freaking how do you even argue against this, Hannah? Well, she's gonna
and
try.
here's another thing too, is that like what? Well, I want to get back to definitions. So, like when you say that there is no like systemic, and I kind of hesitate to even use the word, but when you say that there is like, something attacking men, what do you mean? But like, what does that look like to you? Because what if it's things like, what's in our food? What if it's in things like the Great Society that Lyndon B. Johnson put into, effect like in the 1960s, and how that over the course of generations removed fathers from the home and incentivized women to kick them out, in particular in the Black population, which is seeing like, a lot of harm has been done as a result of fatherlessness. And of course, Hannah Cox blames the men for that. But there are systemic things, and women are still making choices, and they are making conscious choices to act on these things. Is it possible that when boys go to school and their entire education system, the quality being what it is, which is bad enough already for both men and women, but their education isn't even geared towards the ways that boys learn, and it treats boys like broken girls, and it has from the moment they enter school until they're finished with college. Like, if I brought those things up, and I think that there are things that just need some tweaking to fix, but you would probably, Hannah Cox would probably think that I'm trying to like put men in this victim class. I don't actually think that. I'm more so sort of co-sign with Paul's, statement where he says there are no victims, only volunteers. But I do think that when you do this to children, when they're very young, and you do this slowly over time, and you condition them into a certain mindset, that by the time they're like out of high school or college, they're just already in this headspace of being the enemy to women, and that women should fear them, which I experienced myself when I went to college. If I brought that up and I said that was happening, that's not the same as me saying men are victims. That's me saying men have problems, and that's a very important distinction. We're not addressing them. We're essentially incentivizing the destruction of the family, which a lot of people in this conversation are doing on purpose.
We need to get to the point, and I will take it even more further because I'm radical. We need to be able to be as comfortable. If we really want to pursue an egalitarian culture, so-called, we need to be as comfortable talking about men as victims as we are talking about women as victims. And we also need to be as comfortable blaming women as we are blaming men. I mean, how are we supposed to have egalitarianism if our fundamental emotional attitudes towards men and women are so vastly different, that we are so discomforted by blaming women and so discomforted by recognizing that men can be victims? Because the end of the day, what does that actually mean? What does that emotional discomfort mean? It means we cannot recognize the consequences of women's actions to the same degree as we recognize the consequences of men's actions. And we can't recognize the idea that men can be acted upon externally in ways that are unfair, in the same way that we recognize that women can be acted upon externally in the ways that are unfair. These ideas are absolutely conservative. That's the thing. I mean, I hear leftists beak off about how women are victims and men are to blame, and I'm like, yeah, you that's an inheritance. That's generations upon generations upon generations of morally typecasting men and women as completely separate moral categories. Men as actors and women as things that are acted on. And you are all just spouting off the same kind of conservatism. If you truly want to be, and this is what really irks me, is they use the term progressive when they're not. They use the term liberal when they're not. They use the term forward thinking when they're not. They just parrot the same bullshit over and over and over again without a creative thought between them, without the ability to step out of the true paradigm and actually see beyond it. You guys aren't left. That's the real problem. Or you aren't
They're not liberal.
They're not liberal. They aren't creative. They aren't innovative.
No.
They're just another form of conservatism without being willing to admit it. Okay. And I'm not saying conservatism is bad. This conservatism is. This kind of pretending LARPing as a conservative is, though, in my opinion.
Yeah.
All right.
I got some super chats, and then we'll keep going. So Celine, this was a little earlier, gave us $1.99 and says, leftists only care about women if they can capitalize. Well, that's what feminists do. They use women to make money and stay in power. The Buddick, again, who asked us about the Medicare and Tonkasaw, gave us $2 and says, lulz, keep rocking from beyond the grave, y'all. Thank you. All right, so we will. All right, let us continue with this.
Answers out of them, like point to a policy, point to a law, point to what's actually hurting you. It doesn't.
We do.
Okay, let's go through some laws, Hannah Cox.
Sure.
Okay, so how about the first right of any human being is a right to their bodily autonomy. And we violate that whenever babies are born by cutting a bit of their penis off. It's called circumcision or male genital mutilation. That's one that cannot be refuted. And it's not even done for religious reasons, by the way. It sort of like that was like the gateway, but I think it was like Kellogg that kind of got that ball rolling. But that doesn't matter. It's a violation of bodily autonomy. It's a violation of your rights as a human being. So that's number one, as far as rights go. And other things could be, well, I don't know. We could look at false allegations, the way that the crime of rape is written into law as something that still excludes men from being victims of rape at the hands of women for whatever reason, just because of the language of the law, even though it totally can happen. And in fact, it's actually it happens more often than most people want to acknowledge. There's also the issue of divorce, paternity fraud, false paternity, which is like a different kind of paternity fraud. What's another big one?
Men cannot legally exempt themselves from the responsibility of parenthood.
Right.
Even when
child
they're
support,
raped.
alimony.
Even when they're raped.
Even when they're raped, yes.
Even when a man is raped, he still is liable for child support and the expectation of supporting a child that was conceived by him being raped. And that is in law. That is precedent in law. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Keep going.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, those are just some of the things that are real that happen that are disproportionately affecting men. Homelessness, the way that we treat our vets, like, those are mostly men, you know? So, yeah,
conscription. Did you say conscription?
Conscription, yes, it's another way that men don't have a right to their own body, selective service, which they have to sign up for. And if you think, oh, that hasn't happened in a while, look at Ukraine. They were conscripted there, and they even like extended the age to like 42 or 45 or something. So there were men in their 40s that had to fight for Ukraine and probably died. And they didn't have a right to get out of that. That's not patriarchy. That's not male privilege.
And the Ukraine has, they're a Christian nation. They're also Western insofar as Eastern Europe can be considered Western. but they share a lot of cultural values with
Yeah,
us.
and it
It's not
doesn't
that
matter. It's the principle. I don't care if they're conscripting people in China. I would call it a men's issue. So it doesn't matter where it is.
I'm
But
just
that's
saying,
my
people
point.
could say that, well, Afghanistan, but like the situation with Afghanistan applies to women in the West. Well, it's a completely
Yeah.
different legal system, a completely different religion. And also, they are conscripting men as well. So,
Yeah. Even the
okay.
trans women stop being trans women when this comes time to conscript.
Yeah.
So
there's just not many examples they have. They will say things like schools have become feminized, which again doesn't really make any sense.
We now have
schools have always
statistical evidence that boys are discriminated against in terms of grades.
yeah.
So boys will get better grades if they change their names to female names or gender neutral names. Like they are actively being discriminated against in terms of their grades in schools. Right? I mean,
Yep.
that's not a law, but it's something that's statistically happening. Can we include statistical happenings as well? Things that you can see when you look at the science? I would hope so, but I mean, we've just said a whole bunch of laws. Genital mutilation, the men don't have the legal right to separate being raped from becoming a parent. Conscription and selective service. And I mean, those are some pretty big ones. They're all around bodily autonomy, which is, bodily autonomy is the base of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Men aren't even above the base line. And this woman presumes to speak in complete ignorance. Like I said, her ass would be making more sense than her face at this point.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, at least it's more functional because it removes something from her body, Okay, let's keep going.
All right.
always been feminized in the sense that you most likely have a female teacher, and perhaps in the fact that you were expected to be quiet, you're expected to sit in your seat, you were expected to pay attention for long periods of time. I have a lot of issues with the structure of schools. Add it to the list of reasons I am so rabidly pro school choice. But to suggest that men are falling
Yeah, that's, this is like another look at me. I'm libertarian. I advocate for this thing. But if all the schools are doing the same shit, school choice won't matter. And I think they
Shouldn't matter.
are. Like there was this report I saw about, it was basically an argument being made that like if you think that you can take your children out of public schools and put them into charter schools or private schools or even Catholic schools and that they won't get a woke education, you are wrong. Like those places are just as infected because they all get their orders from, like the same sources. And so what's the difference? You're going to be praying in Catholic school and still learning about feminism and critical race theory or whatever. So there's no avoiding that stuff. The only solution is homeschooling or a gutting of the Department of Education, which hopefully is happening next year, which is what I heard, because it has to change. But the way that boys learn, it's not even like necessarily an abusive thing. It's just ill-suited for the ways that boys learn. And, I think Hannah Cox is she's being a little bit dismissive of the seriousness of this because women are getting a higher education. They're getting preferential treatment in terms of the diplomas and certification and jobs. And at the same time, while women are doing that much better in all those areas, they're also ending up six figures in debt as a result. And they're looking for men who make more than they do or are higher on the ladder than they are, which is, again, drawing from a very small pool because men are not finishing school. They're not doing as well because the education is not considering the fact that the sexes are different and therefore they learn differently. And so that puts men on the back foot. And, it's just the reality. Like women are looking for men they're looking for men from a very small pool of men that manage to get through all that. And those men are the ones that are going to get their pick of the litter. But meanwhile, the average man, maybe even a man who just wants to do a laboring job, maybe that's what most people can do. There's nothing wrong with that. I don't think that that's like not a perfectly, noble profession. If you're a farmer, we need those people. If you're a construction worker, if you work the roads, if you work the pipes, if you work on the electric poles, if you're on the oil rigs, we need those people. So like there's no shame in that. Like women they think, oh, I want to engineer or CEO or whatever. Well, good luck with that. Like that's not most men. Most men don't, they're lucky to just have like a regular job. So we've created the conditions for this problem, and it is a social problem, but there's also educational aspects of it too. And of course, Hannah Cox just wants you all to know that she believes in school choice. And if only they listened to her, everything would be fine now, but it wouldn't actually change anything because all schools are fucked, not just the public ones.
Okay.
Anyway.
Well, I mean, basically our whole system is fucked because we got to solve this problem or we're fucked. Like, I mean,
because something has happened.
Yeah, and maybe like individual men are in the chat saying, "Well, I got my shit figured out." Well, good for you, dude. Like I'm okay too, but that's not the issue. We're not talking about individual people's issues, okay? Like if you have sons, whether you're a man or a woman, you might want to wonder, are they going to be okay? Are your sons going to be okay? You're not going to be around for them your whole life. Are they going to be okay? Well, does our society take their needs and concerns into account, because they will have them because they're human beings. So
yeah, and ultimately will your sons have something to work for, really?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Doesn't make sense. The schools look virtually like they looked 100 years ago, and that's by design, and that's a problem because the government, when it owns something, it prevents those institutions from growing and evolving and changing as
Is there anything new
in the market.
in
But
this?
I'm gonna jump ahead to where she talks about I guess the misogyny versus misandry, which of course, this guy, this is awful.
I actually think this guy puts this really well.
Do I think that men are shifting to the right politically because women are too misandrous to them?
Okay. Again, men are not really shifting to the right that much. It's a very slight shift, okay? But this male feminist, this is a male feminist. This male feminist
I
is
have
going to
never seen this expression. I have never seen the expression on a man's face.
It's just a weird pause face, that's all.
No, seriously. No, he's making that expression. Look at that expression of contempt. He's going to tell us all how he's the one good man. Okay, let's hear it.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, but no. Hear me out. I think that what you would identify as misandry is a negative response that women have to experiencing misogyny on a systemic and interpersonal level.
Which they don't. That's never been proven.
No. See, misandry is just women reacting to thousands of years of misogyny. That's all it is.
Dude,
so men are getting a sting of pain, and they are not entitled to that. And women, they're allowed to hold men who may be like 18 years old or 19 years old accountable for thousands of years of shit that they never experienced. Yeah, they could be 12. Yeah, sure. We can go back.
6-year-olds accountable for this shit. I've seen that from women. All right, dude. There is no evidence that what you're asserting is true. Almost everybody, the statistical evidence shows women have an in-group bias, which means they prefer women to women. Even men prefer women to women. And everybody prefers to harm men over women. Where are women finding all of these people who hate them and discriminate them against them more than they do men? Where is this misogyny? It seems more like you use an allegation of misogyny to claim some kind of moral high ground from which you start lobbing attacks. All right. Okay.
All right. So let's keep going.
Because what a lot of men don't understand is that what they're experiencing is a response to sexism. Too many people treat it as a starting point. And this next part is for the boys. I want y'all to listen up for a second, right? I want to validate, because I've experienced it. I know that experiencing those real and genuine feelings that women have about experiencing misogyny,
nobody cares anymore.
Receiving that can feel hurtful as a man. It can feel hurtful. I'm not denying that.
This is what the left has. This is what the Libertarian Feminist has.
Yes.
This is
the
it.
left, Allison. That's the left. It's not liberals. It's the left. It's the communists. It's the feminists. It's the activists. It's the influencers. It's the left. L-E-F-T. That's them. It's okay. Just admit it. It's them. You don't have to be one of them. You don't have to defend them. You don't have to defend that position. Just attack it, because that's what they're worthy of. That's all they have. That's what they are. That's what it is. I am right, period.
Okay, I just want to respond to something. It's Spencer G in the chat again. He's like,
that's okay.
I'll let you all enjoy your echo chamber. Dude, Everybody but us thinks that women are victims and men oppress them. Everybody but us. We have an echo chamber of 2 people, and the rest of you all believe the same damn thing, almost without exception. Right? Everybody thinks men are to blame. Everybody thinks women are victims. Everybody prefers to try to see how women are harmed by things and stop that. Everybody prefers, like you show people research that shows that women are better than men. They love it. They eat it up. They're like, oh my God, that's so perfect. You show them research that men are better at women than something, they immediately dismiss it and say it's biased and say that the scientists who did it are obviously anti-women. Everybody loves women. Everybody wants to protect and provide for women. We are the only ones you will ever meet that say, hey, wait. What about men? Are we ever going to talk about men? Are we ever going to look at men? Are we ever going to see the situation for men? Are we ever going to swallow that kind of cringy feeling that you get when you think about men as victims and actually look at the situation rationally? Are we ever going to do that? We're the only ones. Not just specifically us, but also basically, well, let's face it, me and Brian have basically met every human being on the planet who's willing to have this conversation. We know them personally, almost.
Yeah.
We know them personally. And you say that we're in the echo chamber. We're like the crack outside of the echo chamber.
Like, yeah, I mean, but he said echo chamber, Allison, so we're just dead now. We're crushed. How will we ever recover? It's over for Badger cells.
Here's a question for everybody who's confused by what I'm
dead.
Saying. What is the argument that convinced you that women were oppressed? What was the argument? When in your life did you not feel that was the case? And what was the argument that convinced you? And did that argument also include the situation for men? Go think about that. Think about it hard.
Mm-hmm.
You may realize that you are already existing within a box that you have never questioned. Okay.
Yeah, let us now continue to be schooled by this guy who's completely like unlocked the code the sarcophagus in Montezuma's tomb to find the truth is that women hating men is men's fault.
Yes.
Is essentially what it is.
Oh my
God, it's okay.
Brian, did you see that coming? Did you see the blaming men coming? No.
That's a complete twist. Who wrote this TikTok? M. Night Shyamalan?
Yes, what a twist.
Yeah, right?
I've shed tears over it. It can feel essentializing. It can feel as though people talk about you
because it is
intrinsically evil. I understand that. What you need to understand, what people need to understand, I'm very serious about this part, is that is a domino, and the first domino is misogyny. It is patriarchal systems that oppress women, because oppressive systems.
So how much of women's bullshit is excusable?
How is it possible for Hannah Cox to be a libertarian and believe in systemic systems?
Oh,
because that systematic systems of institutions, that's statist argumentation.
Yeah,
that is coming from the idea that there are gigantic structures that you can't see or hear or taste or touch or smell, and they hold all the power, and yet she doesn't believe in a government somehow, or at least doesn't think there should be one.
Should be one to oppose the shadow systems of systemic systemhood.
Yeah.
But here's the other thing. Like, how much can you excuse of women's crap? Like, for now, based on the FBI definition of rape, which includes force or threats of force, credible threats of force, millennial women are using force 2 to 3 times more often than millennial men to force sex. Okay, can we start when do women get held to account for their behavior? When does the get out of jail free card expire? That's right, never. Because the real issue is to continue to perpetuate the conservative notion that women's actions don't matter. That's what he's doing. So he's making a gigantic framework to explain why, oh, girl's so cute. Girl's so cute. They can't do anything.
I love my mama. My mama would never do that.
And even that, and also
she's beyond reproach.
Girls are incapable, teehee. That's what he's saying. Math is hard. That's what he's saying. It's all just a gigantic pretzel going back to women are the weaker sex. Women couldn't possibly be cruel. Women couldn't possibly be violent. Women couldn't possibly do things that are nasty. Certainly not to men. That's impossible. It's like a kitten threatening a lion. It just doesn't happen. Okay. It's such a contemptuous attitude towards women.
Yeah. This is more of that one good man stuff right here. This guy.
All right.
Create hatred and negative feelings and bitterness in people. And that's very understandable. And that kind of negative emotion does not always come out in a way that is pro-social, in a way that is like super productive. And again, as a man who's experienced it firsthand, I will say that the way that hurt and trauma that comes from experiencing misogyny, the way that comes out, the way that lands on men who are like new.
He can't handle being a
man
man and being affected by something externally. It violates his sense of self. Therefore, he's constructed this gigantic mental pretzel to blame men for women's actions. Like, I swear to God, this is so fucking transparent. I can't deal with the idea that women can act on me negatively as a man. Therefore, when women act on me negatively as a man, I'm going to go through some convoluted, crazy straw reasoning to blame it on men. Right? My manhood is well, not just my manhood, but my credentials as a one good man are in jeopardy. Therefore, all the shit that I've dealt with women, I'm going to blame on men. Because God, I don't want to be a man who got punched by a woman. What a weakling I would be. Like, this is the same shit. How do people not see it? How do people not see that this is the same iteration of the same shit? You see what I'm saying? No, nobody does. God damn. Oh, good.
No,
good.
I mean,
someone does.
well, this is, of course, I've been doing this for 10 years. I get it.
Hurts a lot sometimes and is not always super effective. What I'm seeing missing from a lot of y'all's analysis, pointing at the root cause, too many folks are starting the story at what they call misandry. They're acting as though nothing's going on and women just started hating on them for fun. And what it tells me, at least on a personal level, is that a lot of y'all are not in like genuine, like honest relationships with women. Because you just need to hear how women interact with men and how men treat women.
What the hell are you in a relationship with?
Well, okay, let's break down what he's arguing here. Okay. So he's trying to make the claim that women experience misogyny, and therefore this is why there is misandry. Now, of course, he fails to get into the details of what he means by misogyny and what it looks like, but he thinks that men's misogyny created essentially women's misandry. But let's back up for a second, okay? So for how long have men been, I guess, hateful of women? He's saying institutional sexism. So was it your father that hated your mom? Is that where it started? Or was it your grandfather that hated your grandma? Or was it your great-grandfather that hated your great-grandmother? Like, how many generations back did the misogyny end, or at least start to change? Like, how this is the thing that this narrative teaches boys that I don't think is talked about enough. If they buy into this, then they hate their fathers and their father's father all the way back, because they believe that that change only started with them. So this boy, if he thinks that his father was a bad man that hated his mom, because that's what misogyny means. Let's not fuck with the definition, okay? Then that means that he is basically saying, well, my father was terrible because I'm not going to be like him, or my grandfather was terrible. So what this does is it actually kills his attachment to his entire line, because now he's the only man that's worth a damn, and all the men who came before him are not. And that's a narrative. That's not true. Like, it would be like he'd have to basically make the case that his father and his grandfather and his great-grandfather all the way back, they did not have healthy relationships with his mother or his grandmother or his great-grandmother all the way back. There's not, like, no way, right? So he's the only change. Like, how likely do you think that is? Now let's look at this another way, because I think the misogyny thing, it doesn't hit. It doesn't work. Okay. That's cap, as the kids say. So let's say we're talking about this narrative instead. What if your mother bought into an idea that men everywhere hated her and only stopped hating her in the 1960s or the 1980s or the early 1900s, if we're talking about like a great grandparent or something? Because that's what the narrative is. The narrative is that men have hated and oppressed women and kept them under their heel for all of human history, including today. Or maybe if they're really charitable, they'll say, well, it stopped like not that long ago. Like in the 60s, all of it was fixed.
2 years
Yeah,
ago.
or 2 years
usually.
ago. Right. Yeah, 2 years ago.
With
So
the latest feminist initiative.
whatever the new feminism is, that's the one that's going to fix it. And it never seems to go away. So I actually have a lot of pity for this guy, because he must actually have an extremely low opinion of his own father or his father's father. And that was from this narrative, because he has to presume that either the women in his life were lied to about reality, which I think is true. And I think there's a lot of strong evidence for that. And they're buying into this narrative, and they're emotionally reacting to the narrative they bought into. And he is sympathizing with their emotional reaction to this lie. Or that's actually all true, and his father and his father's father and everybody else hated women, like right up until him. He was the guy who stopped it. He is the hero. Which one of those narratives is more comfortable? I think that the last one is. That's the one he wants to go with, because he's like, I'm a good man. I'm not like these other guys, right? And that's,
Of course.
I mean, that's the male feminist beta male behavior that we're seeing. That's what I mean. I don't know what else to call it, but that's what it is.
And interestingly enough, it's beta male, but it is actually centering himself as the only man with legitimate access to women sexually. Think about it. And it really comes down to that.
Yeah.
I mean, even if he doesn't have a single woman in his life in that way, because he's centered himself as the one good man, he is the only one worthy of a woman or multiple women, a harem of women, a psychological harem of women. He's worthy of all of the women. All other men aren't. And it's like, that is basically Stone Age thinking. Like, really, if you think, it's like the resurgence of Stone Age thinking, the idea that that you are the only one who's worthy of women. Or I mean, and actually it's even less than Stone Age, because the Stone Age, usually you were okay with your tribesmen, having women. This is like pre-Stone Age. Maybe it's infantile. I don't know. It's like the relationship of a child to its mother, honestly. But anyway, I pulling it back. And also, again, this is an allegation about reality. Feminists made an allegation about reality. No one ever thought to hold them to any kind of scientific standard about it. So it's never been proven. It doesn't need to be proven false, because it's never been proven true. So we're all operating in a box defined by an idea that was never subjected to any kind of scientific rigor. Does anybody else like sort of find that annoying? Like, yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, because we have to wrestle with this, where, it's like Karen described it. We're sword fighting the fart, because we have to like essentially debunk something that hasn't even been proven true. And it's all based on people's fifis.
Yeah, it's like it's and the thing is that we shouldn't have to do anything with, like, we should not have even been in. Nobody should be in this box, guys. Like, this is a box created by a narrative that has never been proven true. It hasn't even gone through the first step of being proven true or false. Okay? We shouldn't be in this box, nor should we be allowing this box to inhibit our ability to develop solutions to legitimate problems. We don't have to blame men or women. I mean, I personally really love blaming women, so I'm going to continue to do that. But we don't have to blame men or women for the difficulties that we're in. We can blame technology. We don't know how to prepare the dynamic between men and women in the context of the technology that we have today. Well, and the fact that we exist in a box that's constraining our thinking, making it very conservative, very limited, very minimal in its creativity, is preventing us from developing the solutions necessary to solve this issue, the issue of the relationship between men and women, basically in a technology that we've never experienced before as humans. All right, that's an elaborate thing, so I'll just leave it there. Let's go back to it.
Yeah, I got another super chow, and I don't know like how much longer we want to go, but it's been like 2 hours.
Yeah,
and
I have
15
some
minutes.
final thoughts about Trump getting women or men a girlfriend.
All right, but let me read the super chow really quick. So Richard Bier gives us $5 and says, I would like to know just when in history that men had things just given / handed to them just for being men, according to the feminist complaints such as Hannah Cox mentions. Thank you. Well, yeah, that we're still waiting for that. I think I've been waiting for that one for 10 years, guys. So no answer yet. Nothing substantial. All right. Do you want to say something about?
Oh, yes. Okay. So first of all, is there anything of interest in the
I mean, like mostly it's just her like, talking about what a man should be, and I think that's all obvious. Like a real man is all these things that I like, and they have to be aggressive, and they have to be assertive, and they have to go get it, and they have to be like driven and all this. And I get all that stuff, but again, like she's not acknowledging that there are obstacles, that things like DEI programs and ESG scores and affirmative action and the way that are educated, like these are all real. Like this is all real stuff that affects men.
She doesn't even acknowledge.
No, she won't. She'll just be like, well, just work harder, guys. And it's like, okay, well, I mean, I'm sure that a lot of men are up to the task, but the thing is, you can't act like that doesn't exist. Just because men, like, can you imagine if we created like affirmative action or DEI for men and for white men in particular? Do you think that like black women or queer black women are gonna like just pull themselves up by the bootstraps? No, they're gonna cry and whine, and they're gonna demand like intervention at the state level. So, but like again, at least like we're acknowledging this is real. So that's it.
Yeah.
Like,
Okay. What I was gonna say is that she doesn't even acknowledge that she's setting this bar for men to jump over, and Trump is essentially saying, "Well, hey, why don't we get rid of all of the artificial impediments for men to jump over the bar that women like Hannah Cox has set?" and she doesn't understand why men would be like, "Oh, well, if they want to be able to jump your bar, Hannah Cox, why wouldn't they want to get rid of the artificial impediments to doing so? Dumbass." Okay.
Also, I don't think that any men are asking for the state to give them women, except lefty men that supported Bernie Sanders, which there's a video clip of. He didn't specifically say that, but I mean, like, yeah, if you think that that what you get comes from the state, then you might have that idea, kind of like women do, where they want like free abortions paid for by taxpayers, up until including birth, or like just free cars and food stamps and homes and all this, and like a UBI. Like that's the shit that women are asking for. That's state shit. Where's the Hannah Cox video about that?
Okay.
Like, I think most men want to earn their way. That's like the overwhelming majority of men just want to earn their way, and they just don't want obstacles. And the state gives them obstacles right now.
Yeah. And those men who want women know that Hannah Cox sort of actually in some ways reflects what women want in men. They want a go-getter. They want someone aggressive. They want somebody with money and credentials under their belt. And they look at the two options. One option is going to continue to manufacture obstacles to becoming the kind of man a woman like Hannah Cox wants. And the other has said maybe he'll start removing those obstacles. And they have decided to vote in favor of the person who says, I will remove the obstacles from becoming the kind of man that women like Hannah Cox wants. And Hannah Cox turns around and gives the shocked Pikachu face. Why?
Mm-hmm.
How did that? Why? Because men are eminently practical. And when you say, jump this hurdle, they're going to attempt to jump the hurdle. And if possible, if there are obstacles from jumping the hurdle, they will get rid of those obstacles, right? That's how it works. And then there are the guys who have given up on women entirely. In fact, I know this is going to be weird, but of all the men that I know who have any ability to be gay, all of them have become gay. I know that sounds, but it's like they're done. They don't even want to try to find a woman or keep one. And there's and outside of that, guys who are straight are giving up. So they are interested in a candidate who's going to make their lives easier and allow them to actually pay for the things that they want, or some kind of a reasonable standard of living, which they see as Trump, right? That's as simple as that. Very practical decision.
Well, yeah, they also don't want women voting to essentially destroy the country because they're mad that a guy said repeal the 19th on Twitter.
Well,
And they're just, I think a lot of men were just like, you know what? We're done. We're gonna fix this shit. This is stupid. We let women run this country to the brink of destruction, and we're just gonna like pull it back a little bit. I think a lot of it was that too. It was a big middle finger.
All
that
the I
whole
remember
thing.
all the online conservative women talking about the great cat turd gate.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, us women, we're not going to vote conservative, or we're not going to vote for the right because cat turd said, some joke account on Twitter said repeal the 19th. You gotta be polite to the conservative women, or we're going to vote to destroy. Well, that was bullshit too. Obviously, those conservative women who threatened that didn't speak for conservative women. That's what I'm getting at, Brian.
Mm-hmm.
Because
oh yeah, because they weren't conservative women. They weren't conserving anything. They were just being mad online. They were just they were basically the same as the feminists. Like I said, at the end of the day, like most people have feminist leanings regardless of what letter is next to their name or what they call themselves. It comes down to what they believe. And very few people are willing to challenge that.
Mm-hmm.
So
but anyway, so to answer the title, men Trump won't get you a girlfriend. No. Although he may make it easier to make money, which may attract the chicas. But other than that, yeah. But here's the other thing. This is what I wanted to get on, because I think Hannah Cox, or did you want to finish this, dude? Do you want to finish listening to this?
We can jump ahead. I mean, he basically repeats himself, and then she basically co-signs it.
Ugh.
And like her whole thing is like, well, I don't always agree with people, and he's kind of generalizing, but I do think this is true. So it's like it's a weaselly way of getting out of actually having to co-sign on the thing.
Let's blame women. Let's blame men, especially for women's actions.
Yeah, it's always
God forbid we be a society that encourages women to develop moral autonomy. Anyway, so my thing was like, yeah, Trump is not going to solve the issue of the fundamental breakdown of the relationship between the sexes in our society. And it's not just American, it's everybody in the West. And it's also spreading everywhere. There is a fundamental breakdown in the relationship between men and women. Nobody has solved it yet, not in the context of modern day technology. The Amish are doing fine, but they aren't dealing with the same kind of pressures we are. Nobody solved it. And so Trump won't get you a girlfriend. Trump can't solve that problem because it's a bottom up problem. So I think she's got a point. Did I just say that?
Well, what do you think her point is?
Well, Trump won't get you a girlfriend.
Well, yeah, sure, but I mean, yeah, but that's obvious, and it's also based on, again, okay, look, here's the thing with that. Hannah Cox creates a question that nobody's asked, says men asked it, and then answers it. So, okay, good luck, I guess. Like you just dunked on yourself, and then you said, "Oh, look, I win." It's like, yeah, but no, men aren't saying that. Men okay, you might find like some obscure dude on like a forum somewhere saying that we should all get issued, cat girls. And as much as I'd like to see that happen for some of you guys, that nobody serious is really saying that. And she has basically made a whole 40-minute video answering a question that nobody asked, and then saying, look at me, I'm so smart. it's just like, I feel like it's just wasting my time again, you know? Like, what do you, okay. And I mean, like, granted, she says other things that I can knock down, like talking about toxic masculinity and how much she says basically that the manosphere essentially crafts a victim narrative for men. Not possible. Another thing that's just true. The fact that the overwhelming reaction to that, the manosphere's talking points is negative, shows you that it doesn't work anyway, even if it were true, which I don't think it is. So it's like, well, then what are we doing? Like, what are we even, like, this isn't even a real conversation because you're just making shit up and then you're knocking it down.
Okay, so I wanted to respond to somebody in chat. Bucolic Epitimus Rex says the key difference: misandry results in slightly sad and lonely men. Misogyny results in women who have been assaulted and murdered. No.
Did you really think that you just said something that we haven't heard before?
No.
Like,
okay. The men who engage in those activities are criminal men. They are the most persecuted men in our society. First of all, the rate at which men kill women is so minimal in relationships anyway. It's a non-starter. It's like you're taking a very small problem. A problem of misandry is suicide. The constant degrading of men and not establishing a relation or a identity outside of the service to others is driving the suicide problem in men. It's also starting to drive the increasing suicide problem in women, but that's another conversation, right? That is systemic misandry. Like, criminal behavior is not systemic misogyny, because what you're doing is you're cherry picking the actions of men, and you're choosing the actions of criminal men and not all the men who brought them to justice, not all the men who are keeping them imprisoned, not all the men who had probably attempted to intervene to save the woman if it had ever happened in public. And also, you're ignoring the entire history of men developing the justice system to control men's behavior towards women in the first place, because it's always been the case that men have been persecuted for their behavior towards women. Okay, Ware-Guild. Men always had to pay bigger fines for assaulting, and that includes sexually assaulting or harming women in like the Norse system. Okay, there's always been protections, legal protections for women in a way that didn't exist for men. We've always protected women against domestic violence, or at the least reduced the scope of it. So, for example, if you look at a society where men's violence towards women is restricted to a certain amount, they don't restrict women's violence. So a woman can be as violent as she wants. They don't restrict her sexual violence. They don't even consider it an issue. They'll blame men for the violence of the women in their life. And this is consistent throughout history. We don't look at that. So how is it that men are more defined in their relationship to women by the actions of men who are criminal, who have likely have histories of abuse, who have genetic abnormalities that lead to brain dysfunction in the realm of impulse control? So these are genetically abnormal men. In fact, let's look at rapists. Rapists are more genetically distinct from normal men than gay men are from straight men, and yet you insist on saying rapists say anything about normal men? No, they have nothing to do with normal men. And the predominant action of men in our society is to marginalize these abnormal, criminal, developmentally delayed individuals. And yet you choose, as an act of misandry, to claim that men are more defined by the genetically abnormal criminal men that they actively persecute and attempt to suppress than that persecution and suppression, persecution, I shouldn't use that word, that justice against men who act in this way. Like, how is this? How is this fair? Women are 200 times more likely to be saved by a man in a fire than to be harmed by one. And yet, which one do we define men by? That is an act of misandry. Your choice on how to define men is an act of misandry. Screw off. Excuse me.
All right. Shall we wrap it up? It's been 2.5 hours. So
Yeah, let's
okay.
double check everything. Make sure we got all our T's
Yeah,
crossed.
I missed the super chow, but I read it already.
I feel
Thank
like
you,
nothing more
Richard.
productive will be done today. Let's put it
No,
that way.
there isn't much else to talk about here. But
Nah.
thanks, guys, for coming on the stream. Go ahead and take us out, Allison.
All right.
do
So
the
if
thing, but I'll
you,
do mine.
yeah, sure. Once again, I want to do a shout out to Richard Beer for sponsoring the show. I think these were some reasonable picks. I know they made you feel death, but you know, I think
just
we
my
have to.
soul a little bit, but it's the same. It's I know. It's a request.
It's a request, but it's also like, what else are we going to do? I mean, these are the voices in the sphere. Idiots, freaking idiots with no creativity and no ability to question fundamental aspects of what they've formed their identities on. Sorry. Dumbass.
Yeah.
Dumb.
Well,
okay.
They're just adding to the same pile of shit and thinking they did something new.
Yes.
And like, I'm just saying, can we pick up a shovel and move this out of the way? Because this isn't the whole conversation.
We exist in a box that's based on something fundamental that's never been proven. Like, it hasn't been proven. We don't have to be in this box. We can leave it. Please. You know, let's do that. Let's go for wider horizons than being in a damn box. But anyway, all right. So if you enjoy this show, please support it at feedthebadger.com/support. If you want to send us a message, want to say anything at all, you want to tell us how we're dumb and we don't understand things and we're in an echo chamber, even though all of you exist in the same paradigm, you can do so at feedthebadger.com/justthetip. And if you want to see more of our content, feedthebadger.com/subscribe. And I'm going to hand it back to you, Brian, for the final.
Okay. All right. Well, if you guys like this video, please hit like, subscribe if you're not already subscribed, hit the bell for notifications. Let us know what you guys think about what we talked about in the comment section of this video. You can find, if you're on the mobile chat or the mobile stream, you can go to the channel and look at the horizontal, and there you can like post comment. You can post comments on the vertical as well. And if you want to watch the videos themselves in full, I put links to them both in the description so that you can watch them yourself and make sure that we're not being taken out of context. And if you don't mind, please share this video because sharing is caring. Thank you so much for coming on today's episode of Maintaining Frame, and we will talk to you guys in the next video. Happy International Men's Day as of yesterday. See you guys later.
Men's rights activists are machines, dude. Okay? They are literal machines. They are talking point machines. They are impossible to fucking deal with, especially if you have like a couple dudes who have good memory on top of that too. Holy shit, you're fucked.